We've got to roll. It's been an interesting 24 hours since the series finale of Star Trek Picard, the most beloved Star Trek series ever. No, 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 no. I'm lying.
Yeah, you
No.
are lying.
Yeah.
We're gonna start a debate right there with your first sentence, PJ. Jeez.
Ken and Marcelo, thank you for joining me. This
Thank
has
you.
already been a fun conversation before we went live,
Yeah.
but now we need to talk about Star Trek Picard.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
No, it was good.
It was,
Star Trek Picard.
It's a warm up. It's a warm up.
Yeah, it's all in the can now. It's all done. Star Trek
But-
Picard, over and out.
We do have to do the intro thingy.
Oh yeah. Awesome intro.
Thanks. Of course, this discussion will contain spoilers. You got the little thingy there going, telling you. So if you click
Yeah.
on it and you're like, eh. But you know what? If you described this episode to me, I don't know, a few months ago, before I even started watching the show, and it was like a spoiler thing, I'm like, just spill the beans. And I'd be like, oh, that's kind of like, again, that seems like just First Contact all over again. It seems like a lesser version of Star Trek Destiny, which is a book trilogy by David Mack, which talks about both the origins and the end of the Borg, essentially. And this is what we're getting here in this finale. But watching it, dude, it's like one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever. Like, it's the closest to a theatrical movie quality film of an episode. I mean, Discovery gets close with like some of that shit's really expensive looking. You look at the first episode of the second season, that's like especially like theatrical, but and at the end of that second season as well. But this, I like how it focuses, just to jump ahead to the end about the Enterprise D. I love how it just focuses on the D and what's going on at the cube, and there's like it's doing that thing in the big action climax where it jumps around a lot, but it's not distracting. And
Very well edited.
I just love the little things like the shields, the shell shaped shields, the fact that the when they're on the bridge and they're at warp, it's the shrieking stars and not the kind of flashy lights, which I fucking hate. But yeah, Marcelo can jump in anytime. Tell us your initial thoughts. Did you love it or hate it?
I really enjoyed this episode. Like you, I for a couple weeks ago, I was on the stream with the two of you, and I said on the stream, I said, if it's the Borg, I'm going to claw my eyes out. But you know what? When it happened and it was revealed a short while ago that the Dominion were working with the Borg, and it was the Borg again, and they had found a way to integrate their technology into the changelings to become something else. I thought that was a very, very interesting avenue to take the Borg down. And even though I didn't want it to be the Borg, I really like what Terry did with that. As far as the finale, I thought the finale was great. It didn't feel as long as it was to me. Like it felt like it felt like a full meal, but it felt short to me for some reason. I don't know why, because it was like 40 something minutes. It wasn't short.
62.
It was
62
minutes altogether. But
but
the main climax ends like with 15 or 20 minutes left to go or something like that. So you're like, what's going to happen after this? And they have this like kind of like denouement, I suppose, or a conclusion.
Return
in a
of
way.
the King style.
Return of the King kind of thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
we'll slow down. It seems like we're ending, and it's like 1 year later, and then it goes to something else. It's like, holy shit.
Right. No.
Yeah.
No. I think that was it. I think that the main resolution to this whole thing that we've been following for 10 hours went kind of a little bit too fast for me. I was like, oh, it's over already. What the hell? And then we had.
You didn't want the game to end. That's what it was.
Yeah. And and then we had that 1 year jump where it was nice to finally get a a sit down proper with our TNG crew playing poker again. I thought it was wonderful that Terry decided to mimic the shot from All Good Things, but have Picard win at the poker game this time. I thought that was cool.
The last line in the series is this. I've always believed the stars have always been in my favor, or something like that. But then
Right.
it's like it's like a bunch of credits with them still
this-
playing and having
the
fun. But it
spin
really
with-
does feel like at the very end, it doesn't feel like the TNG crew. Just to be brutally honest about it, it feels like them kind of merging, or like becoming more subtly like Gates and
Like they're
Patrick
actors.
and Michael, like especially when Michael says "I fold, okay," and the way he says it,
he
it's
just says-
it's like a Worf outtake. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like I've never heard Worf have that inflection in his voice before, and it sounds very much more like Dorn. And I was like, "That's interesting." I didn't not a complaint or a criticism at all. Not even a nitpick. It's just like interesting, you know.
No, yeah, no.
A lot of interesting moments. It's like it's almost too much to think about, and like right at the beginning like this.
The other,
Like because
the
I didn't even know
other
how to
thing-
start the show. Like, where do we start? Like, oh yeah, Jack's in the Borg thing. But there's so many little moments in this episode. It's one
Well,
of
you
the,
start
Terry
with-
Metalis, bravo. If I ever doubted you, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, my friend.
Well, you
yeah,
start
the
with
other-
Chekhov. You start
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
that's
salute
right.
to the original series and having Walter Koenig come in and do Anton Chekhov, which is not only a salute to the original series, but is a salute to
Trek
Anton
4.
Yelchin. Anton Yelchin,
Oh, yeah.
the actor who played Chekhov in the JJ movies. So it's a nice little shout out and
But the
salute to
warning,
him.
the warning was also a throwback to
Very-
President's warning in Star Trek 4.
Very good.
Very
good.
Star Trek 4. Yes.
And if you
And
didn't
that's
know
not-
these things, it wouldn't make a difference. It's like it's not it's fan service that's been put out in has been used or put in the show strategically almost. Like it
There's-
needs that if they're gonna put it in there, it needs to mean something. It mean like even the thing with Kirk's body, which they don't go back to.
Right.
But in my mind, I'm just like, yeah, it makes sense if we find out later that yes, they've recovered the Enterprise D.
and
Wouldn't
they
at the
recovered
time,
Kirk at the same time.
yeah, and,
Right,
and
they
that
were-
was, and they that was a while ago, like way back, probably as soon as it like happened, like back in after the events of Generation. So
Right.
Which I think was
No, but
94.
Makes sense.
No, I just want to say a couple more things, and then I'll kick it over to Ken. I did not like the fact that at the very end of the episode they kind of did a post credit thing where Q showed up. I honestly thought, and if this comes out to be a whole setup for them announcing Star Trek Legacy at one point, fine, whatever. They know more than we do at this point. But I honestly thought it was like Terry Metalis saying, "Oh, guys, I'm unemployed now. I want a job." Like it just felt so like, why put that there if you don't know that you're going to pay that off? It was like so annoying. I was like, why do that? Because we don't know if it's going to pay off in any way. So
Well,
it was
that-
just frustrating to me.
well, that's that I empathize because I was also
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
like, why
thinking
do
that. But see, it's a weird thing because people who know Terry online seem to imply that he does not have further employment with Paramount, with the Star Trek brand. He's actually, right now, he's working with Disney on some kind of thing.
Right.
I forget what it is. Doesn't matter. But the point is, like, it seems like that since those weeks have passed, this is all while season 3 was airing. Since those weeks have passed, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But
Well, the
I
show
think-
has been getting a ton of respect from all.
but that's what I'm
types of
saying.
people.
Yeah. It's been getting up there in popularity, and we don't know since the show was aired. I mean, what's been going on behind the scenes with Terry or anything. So they could indeed have already planned a continuation. See, the thing is, if by the time the show was airing, you still weren't sure if you were going to go ahead with a legacy or a continuation of a 7 Enterprise G series or anything like that, if you still weren't sure, you could always take it out of the episode It's just that simple. Do a workaround.
Yeah,
Don't.
do that.
That's why you can almost end. You could have ended the entire series on
TNG crew.
cut from them going off the Enterprise D to boom poker thing, and
That's it.
you could have
Yeah.
skipped over like Picard taking Jack to the thing. You know what I mean? If you
Yeah,
weren't
I
planning
mean that's
a
a very
series.
good point. It's a very good point that
But
powers that be left all that stuff in there.
That's what I'm saying. To have it in there this far in, it's like, guys, come on. You should know by now. At this point in the game, look at what they did in season 2 or season 1. I'm sorry, of Discovery. Before Discovery even started, I know I'm going off on a bit of tangent, but stick with me. They said, we're not going to rely on legacy, Spock, Kirk, and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's going to stand on its own. Yes, Michael is
Yeah.
Spock's adoptive sister, which didn't bother me at all because how many characters in anything that we've ever watched or even read or anything like that have had siblings that we just don't know about. And not every character has to mention every single person they're related to. It's not, unless it's if you're like a sitcom with a family situation and like, the daughter from Family Matters suddenly disappears and nobody speaks of her again.
Well, Happy Days.
There's
The
a
oldest
kid in
son of
Family
Happy
Matters
Days.
that disappears and they never even acknowledge that she was ever alive.
Well, they
it's
did that
really
in Happy
fucking
Days.
scary. No,
Really?
They did that.
Happy.
Yeah, with
Who's the character?
well, in Happy Days, they had the oldest son. I forget that.
Timmy
Cunningham. It's not Richie Cunningham. It's I forget his name. Chuck
Chuck.
Cunningham. So they had Chuck Cunningham. He was in the first half season of Happy Days, and then they just wrote the character off completely. He ceased to exist in people's minds. So as you continue to go through the 11 years of Happy Days, even at the end, the very last episode of Happy Days, where you have the Cunninghams say, you have Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham, Mr. and Mrs. C say, we're very lucky to see our kids grow up, and they talk about Richie, they talk about Joni. This guy never existed. So that's just an interesting aside. Talk about going off on a tangent. That's crazy.
But to get back to the other tangent,
Yeah.
about the siblings, it doesn't bother me that Mike, but I believe them when they said, "Oh, we're not going to depend on the Enterprise and blah blah blah." This and that. Because Pike, at this time we knew Pike was around, so like Pike was always a possibility, right? And way before, I'm not taking credit. I'm sure other people online had said this too at the time.
That's funny.
But I always wanted Anson Mount as Pike. When he was still doing Hell on Wheels, because he was in a movie, he was in a Liam Neeson movie where he was all shaved and stuff. I was like, holy shit, he looks like Jeffrey Hunter. He'd be a good Pike. But anyway, he ended up getting cast because they're just logistically, it just makes sense. It's like, oh, he's the actor in Hollywood of the right age who looks the most like Jeffrey Hunter. There you go.
Right.
Yeah,
And
also,
the fact that he was talented too, he's a good actor. He's
Yeah, also-
if you have,
Yeah,
Hell
very
on
good.
Wheels is a real demonstration of how good his acting is.
also, one more thing, and then I'll shut up. I swear. I
Sure.
don't. Yeah, sure.
You got to let me
yeah,
finish the tangent because this will
Okay,
take forever.
I finish.
So here's the thing: the Enterprise comes in at the end of season 1 of Discovery, and like, now we got the Spock and the Pike stuff. People love Spock and Pike so much. What do they want? A Pike show. Give us a Pike show. That's what That's what they gave us. Strange New Worlds, like it or love it or hate it, whatever you think. Now it's like they're doing the same thing. Well, they kind of doing the same thing with they did a backdoor pilot thing with season 3 of Discovery for Tilly and the cadets. Maybe that's where the Academy show is probably going to go. Who knows? But in this case, they're blatantly just saying to the audience, "Hey, after the credits, we're teasing Q's back in this new show. We don't know what it is, but it's going to be Captain Seven."
So I don't necessarily agree with that. And the reason I don't necessarily agree with that is because if you think about what bookends the Next Generation, right? Q bookends the Next Generation. Encounter at Farpoint all the way to the Last Generation, right?
Yeah.
So I think that from that point of view, and we know that Terry Matalas spoke to John Delancey while he was shooting season 2 and said, "Hey, John, I got a great scene. I want to wrap this series with you just like we started the next generation started with you. I got no money. I can't pay you, but would you come and do it? And he came on for 20 minutes and shot that scene. Now, yes,
Oh,
it just
wow.
happens to lean into the idea of him saying your journey is just beginning and all that. And yes, of course, it's queuing up what's, no pun intended, what's coming up next, right? But
You know, it's funny. It's likely that scene was shot probably first or very early on. I would like to know when that scene was shot because John Delancey spoiled that he was in season 3 very early on. While I don't even think season 2 had begun yet. Airing,
Yeah.
I mean, it had been filmed.
But that that's very interesting that you say
Because Ed Spielers does look a tiny bit younger in that scene. No.
it was shot in the scene where Picard comes in and confronts Jack after Deanna runs out of the room. So it was shot later in the series. It was episode 9. But it was in that scene, when they shot that scene, while right before Jack takes control of the security guards and leaves the ship, that's where that scene takes place on the set. And that's when they shot it. They brought Delancey in at that point and shot it there.
Wow, that's cool. No, but it's just very cool that Terry grabbed John Delancey and said, "Hey, I have no money, but can you do this for free?" And it's very cool that John Delancey said, "Yeah, I'll do it."
Of course. I mean, it leads to the potential of the next gig, but also it does bookend the whole thing. So there were certain things that you had to do, right? Bringing back the Enterprise D, the very subtle things like you were saying, PJ. As soon as you finish the title card, episode, part 10, The Last Generation, the very next thing you see is literally a clip from the opening sequence of Star Trek: The Next Generation, the space scene, of the later seasons of The Next Generation.
And then you hear Walter Koenig's voice.
Yes. So
the president
they did
of
all
Earth.
these, all these very subtle things, and they had to do as much as I thought Red Jack or something else or something.
I loved your theory. I felt so bad for you. I was like,
other people loved it too. Like people I brought it up, they're like, "Oh my!" I brought up in chats and stuff. Like, what about Red Jack? And they're like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Probably not though, but it's like that's cool. Only real TOS nerds know that though.
Yeah, it's too deep of a cut.
It is a deep cut.
Right. So, but it fit. It was like in Star Trek 6 when Spock says, "We have a theory that just happens to fit the facts." That's what the Red Jack thing was. A theory that just happens.
It really actually did. It fits so well.
Yeah. So, I just have one more thing to say. So, I didn't like the fact that they rechristened the Titan the Enterprise. I feel that annoyed me to no end. I don't like that at all. I feel. Now, let me know what you guys think about this. I feel that they should have gave Seven a new version of Voyager. I'm like, why wasn't she given?
No, because Voyager is going to happen in Prodigy. That's going to be Janeway's big surprise for Prodigy 2. Is they've got the Voyager A. That's my guess.
Okay.
So they weren't gonna do that.
Yeah, it could, because then they would have to worry about like what is Prodigy doing a few years like behind this, and like how will it add up? Should it be the Voyager A or B or whatever? I don't know. Yeah. Because by Discovery in the year 3280 something. No, it's 3180 something. 3180 something. Sorry, not 32. 31, because it's the 32nd century. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's all very. I don't know what letter that Voyager was.
It was J. I think it was the Voyager J.
Yeah. So, I hear all the theories about, should they or should they not have redubbed the Titan the Enterprise. I don't think they necessarily should have. They didn't need to. But I will tell you that, when they pulled back and you saw USS Enterprise, NCC 171G, I got incredibly emotional. Not because I was thinking of the Next Generation, but because I was thinking of my Star Trek, the original series. And I think when you had that moment and you saw the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is so synonymous with everything Star Trek, the USS Enterprise. It doesn't matter, deep space, whatever it is. Star Trek is the USS Enterprise, right? Yeah. So when you saw that, I got really emotional and I thought of my Star Trek. And I would bet that a lot of people thought of their Star Trek, whatever it was, when you saw that USS Enterprise and you heard the Alexander Courage music, which, by the way, one thing we need to talk
Not to
about
say
is
that, not to say that
music.
things without the Enterprise aren't Star Trek. It's just that's like
No,
original.
not saying-
That's connected to the origin. It's like special. It's Voyager and DS9 are very good, but I'd love to see them get remastered someday, for God's sakes, or
No, they're-
continuation. Because
Yeah.
seeing for example, in this episode, just seeing Tuvok alive and well for one thing. I love
was cool.
Riker's when it's all we jumped ahead to the end because it's all the good parts, all the best parts,
That's all the best.
emotional parts. Actually, the whole episode's good, but
yeah.
when we get to Riker with that captain's log and that beautiful shot of the two ships going,
Which
it's a
is
very good a special effects shot. It actually looks very real. And yes, they do use lens flare, but this is the difference in visual effects. And I know it's a hard job, and it's like you're worked to death in these jobs. But sometimes I think if you're an artist like that who's doing so much visual effects all the time, you forget what looks photorealistic. And you just think the generated image, it's rendered properly, therefore it's going to look real. But it's a tricky business because sometimes the D in both 9 and 10, some shots it's like, oh, this looks like such a CG kind of thing. But in others, especially the wider shots, I got to give them credit. Like that, like some of this, it was like, oh my God, this looks real. This looks fucking like it's really happening. And the best shot in modern Trek to date is the special effects shot of that ginormous Borg cube blowing up. The little explode, like you get to see the scale of it, and the Enterprise is like this tiny little thing with his little shields coming out. It's like, dude, how? If you're a fan of TNG, like, how are you not fucking like going crazy? What? Like, yeah! If I was in a theater, people would be cheering. I'm sure of it.
Of course they were. They were cheering.
They were. They were. Yeah,
Yeah, they were. So I agree. I think that that shot of the two ships, the Enterprise and the Titan, again an homage to the end of Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the Enterprise and the Excelsior.
Yeah.
Again, you didn't need to know that, but if you knew it,
He's great.
you feel really good about it. Also, and I think this is a deep cut. I sent a Twitter message to Terry Metalis. He hasn't responded. But when you see the Borg cube, that gigantic Borg cube, and they're pulling back and back and back with those big musical hits, dun, dun, and you see the Enterprise being so incredibly small to this gigantic Borg cube, reminds me of the Corbomite maneuver, where the Enterprise is dwarfed to about that size to the Fesarius. That I thought was an interesting. Now, whether that was intentional or not, I like to think it was, because that, again, the only other times, there's two other times you've seen the Enterprise dwarfed to that point. One was the Fesarius, the other one was Reacher.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the director's edition shows a little more of that scale too.
You you brought up the music. So yeah, I thought the music was great.
Best score, best television score I've ever heard. Like, no, I don't think anything's come close.
Yeah, okay, I wouldn't go that far, but
But like, what other, like, think of one that's
Twin Peaks.
I'll give, yeah, that's
no,
a good one.
I mean,
That's a good
you know,
one.
I mean,
Yeah.
my favorite score. My favorite score, my favorite score of all time, and this is gonna be obvious to everyone on the panel. Everybody's gonna. My favorite score of all time happens to be Lost. I think you know.
Oh, well,
But
okay.
there's also the score for Westworld. I think is really good.
Yeah.
Person of Interest is really good. Next Generation is great.
Next Generation is not so great.
I mean,
the earlier
I
seasons
do.
used like this, like that. It sounds really 80s in some parts. Was like something's going on where it's like not right. And television orchestras back in the 90s, like they tried, but nowadays what they can do is just like, and this sounds like it's a movie. Like they actually did this for a modern big budget sci-fi action movie.
I think that with the music,
And memorable,
one thing-
but memorable
the
but
next
familiar,
generation,
but
yes, the
original.
next generation,
That's
yes.
very tricky. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
The next generation, one of the rules which
Oops, sorry.
pissed off the composers of the next generation, which was very similar to Roddenberry's No Conflict, is that Gene said no leitmotifs, so there were
What?
no themes, right? There
What?
were no themes to the next, except for the Jerry Goldsmith score. You
Yeah.
don't hear very many themes at all. The only other one you hear is the one that was established in Encounter at Farpoint. Dun, 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 bum, 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 bum. You hear that, and that's sort of the Picard theme, but that even goes away after a while. It's not really recurred.
Right.
And then the only other time you really have a big recurring theme is the Borg theme, and that theme is actually, is the end of the Best of Both Worlds. Fire, dun dun dun, do do do, dun dun dun, do do do, dun dun dun. That piece, but there's not a lot of big memorable. It all sort of blends together, and that's the same thing for Voyager, and that's the same thing for Deep Space Nine. I would argue.
Unfortunately,
they all sort of blend together.
When you think about it, the music was almost like the weakest part, but in the films, they tend to be very memorable. 1, 2,
Well, of
3.
course.
They don't
And
even matter
in
if
the
you like the
original
film or
series-
not. You can. I contend that even people who are not familiar with Star Trek can hear something from a Star Trek film and be like, I've heard that. I've heard that somewhere. But anyway,
the
the Titan theme is one of those things where I'm like, is this original? Because it feels like I've heard this for years. That's the thing about a beautiful score or a theme, a classical theme, is that when it hits you, you're like, I've known this my entire life. Like I've heard this in my head.
If you listen to the soundtrack, which came out yesterday as well, the leaving dry dock sequence is an amazing amalgam of when the Enterprise left the dry dock in the motion picture and when the Enterprise leaves in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. So they definitely do a great mix of the Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner piece, and the Titan theme is completely original. That is an original.
That's a beautiful, like as an original piece. Not even just forget it's for a movie or a TV show or anything. Just as somebody, just as a creation, it's like if you can make something original like that, and then somebody's like, I know this. Like it could be that it has the spirit, or somewhere in like the musical notes, there's some kind of mathematical equation where it's like, this is like kind of Star Trek-y. This is some of the I can't even describe. Like I don't know the technical terms for all these little sounds that they make, like the little jingles and the little like I don't even know what to say about it. But it's they're creating something original with familiar elements. Is the best way to describe it.
The sound effects too. So what's not on the soundtrack, but was used whenever the Shrike showed up. That big blaster piece, that is the same instrument that it plays a little bit different of a noise, but that's the same instrument you hear with V'ger in Star Trek the Motion Picture. That same dum-dum-dum kind of thing, really deep. And then listening to the soundtrack, the music by itself, I hear cues, like I hear the Khan Reliant. I hear that in the soundtrack, and I don't know where it is in the show. I have to
And
think
what
figure it out.
score?
Yeah.
I should post that in the chat in case
No, but
anybody's
actually,
not familiar that it's on YouTube.
my favorite score from the original set of films would have to be, like my favorite Star Trek film.
I'm still
of all
here.
time
I'm doing something.
Is Star Trek 6. I absolutely adore Star Trek 6. I don't know why. There's something about that movie that just every time I watch it, I love it so much. But I love the opening sort of salvo when the credits come over. You have that deep seated music, like duh, just you just sit in it, and then and then the first thing that you see is Sulu doing the captain's log, and then you see Praxis blow up. It's just
you see Praxis first.
Let's go first, right? Practice.
As soon as the director comes up,
boom.
which
Yeah.
which in the theaters when I saw it, that boom was
Yeah.
so incredible as a sound design effect. It was, and then the waves that come at you.
Yeah. Da, 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 da.
Yeah, there's like that was really. I mean, talk about opening a movie. Um,
Yeah.
and and then yes, moving to the Excelsior, and then the
It's
sound,
so
which I only heard it in the theater, but the sound when the shockwave hits the Excelsior and the Excelsior is knocked back, it sounds like someone has kicked a can. Kink. And
really okay.
yeah, and that's not what it was, but that's what it sounds like. It just sounds like the ship is made of metal, and so you hear
Yeah.
this metal getting kicked by a giant god. But I even with my sound system here, and I have a pretty nice sound system at home, it doesn't quite replicate what I ever heard in the theater.
You
But
know
yeah,
what?
so yeah,
You know what? I'm actually gonna after we get off the thing, I'm actually gonna watch the scene again, see if I hear the king.
yeah, no,
Because
it's definitely there when the
yeah,
Excelsior gets, and then turn it into the wave, turn her into
yeah,
the wave.
it's
That was
great.
that was a great sequence, and the music was very different than
Yeah, very different.
you had of course Jerry Goldsmith with the motion
Yep.
picture. You went
James
James
Horner.
Horner with 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Then you went to
Who
the
did 4?
Heidelman, I think his name is.
Heidelman. Yeah.
He did
I
the.
posted
and
a
that
link
was-
to the score of season 3 on YouTube, like the full score.
Yeah,
I don't know
it's
how long
really
they're gonna
great.
leave it up. Sometimes they put up those things and like take them away. It's like now buy it, but I don't know if they're
Right.
gonna do it with this.
No, but the other piece of music that I absolutely love, with another movie that I could just watch anytime because it's so light and fun. Everybody knows what I'm gonna say. The Voyage
Is it a
Home.
J.J. Abrams film?
No,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. It's not. It's a Voyage Home. Funny thing, I only this is gonna surprise you people. I only watch the JJ films like once a year.
Well, we need
Once a
I
year.
we need to get
Yeah.
back to the episode because that's what.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I swear. We'll get back in 1 second. But just real quick thing. The other opening salvo that I love is the score for the Voyage Home and that little like adventure-y kind of feel to it.
Well, they if you go back to the Star Trek Picard, and there's a
Yeah.
great track on the soundtrack called Legacies, and that's at the museum. So when Jack and Seven are looking at all the ships, you
Right,
start with the
yeah.
Deep Space Nine theme, then you go to the full Star Trek original series theme, da, na, 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 which you don't hear, right? You hear the motif, dun, 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 but you don't hear that. Da, na, 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 na.
Yeah.
So
whole
you
thing.
hear that. Then it goes to Voyager
Yeah.
when she's saying, "I was born there." And then after Voyager, they hold it for a little bit, and then they go dun 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 dun, which is the Star
Yeah.
Trek 4 theme.
Yeah,
Show the
it's so
bounty.
great.
So it's very cool. Anyway, the
There's-
finale, PJ.
To stay
sorry
on
about
the
that.
to stay on the course of the score for a
Yeah.
bit in the finale
Okay.
is some of the most beautiful kind of like really supports the emotional weight of the scene between Picard and Jack in the Borg realm, and that music that plays is just so sweet. And
Yeah,
then
it is.
when the memories start playing, and these are memories of like a week's time, but even though I'm thinking, I'm like,
Why am I laughing? I'm
it's
sorry.
still damn effective because they've only had a week to get to know each other. And I understand that in that scene, like Picard could have said, if you do this, your mother's we're all gonna die. Like he didn't say that. I'm like, say that, Picard. But the way they went, I'm like, okay, cool, it works. He's like, well, if you're gonna stay in here, I'm gonna stay in here with you.
I don't understand. Dude.
I don't know who I was doing the guy from Succession for a second.
Yeah.
Well, son, you're all fucking stupid. That's the guy from what's his name? Brian Cox.
Brian Cox. Yeah.
Yeah, I love doing my Brian Cox impression. I like sound like a prick.
Yeah. No.
He should be in Star Trek. He would be a really good Star Trek antagonist.
villain.
Yeah.
Don't fuck with me. No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Pardon the
no.
language, folks. Pardon the
What
language.
into language?
Yeah, I look. It's no secret that I kind of really didn't like the character that played Jack, but I did warm up to Jack as the series went on, just a little bit. I
He's
will
just a
say,
lonely boy.
yeah,
They should have
yeah,
played that Black Keys song as his theme. Lonely
yeah.
boy,
It should have,
I'm a
yeah, just
lonely boy.
it should have been. Yeah, in my opinion, like Terry Matalas should have figured out a way to bring Wesley Crusher back. I thought,
Oh no.
well, come on,
He
I
could.
love
He could. You
Wesley.
know what? He could come
Yeah,
back. Like,
yeah,
think about if there was a show where Ed Spielers and Jerry Ryan and
yeah, he could come back.
Michelle
But
Hurd.
I'm a
yeah,
Who
Wesley
else is?
fan.
I'm trying to
So.
think of the. I can't remember the names of the actresses who play the
No, but
LaForges. But say that everybody's back, right?
yeah,
Wouldn't it make sense, like, to be like, hey, let's do a story about Jack's brother? And
yeah,
of
of
course,
course.
Beverly and Picard could show up like time and time again in a show like that. Like, people
yeah,
like, this is the last we've seen of them. I'm like, I don't think so. That
No, I don't
wouldn't be
think so.
logical for Paramount if this show is really doing as well as
so you guys,
seems.
so do you guys think that we're gonna? Because another thing that's not to pivot the conversation, but another thing that was announced a little while ago was we're finally gonna get Section 31 in form of a TV movie.
No,
Do you guys?
we'll move on. We can't keep jumping out of the episode. Let's get back to the
Okay.
episode.
Uh,
Just one of the cool things that happened at the beginning. I just wanted to say that I wanted to say earlier was how Seven decides to deal with the assimilated on the Titan stun and then
Transporter
like
stuns. Yeah.
transporter guns deal. That was pretty cool. I liked all that. What'd you think? Did you think that was a good plan? I didn't think they were going to massacre their own crew. I mean, these guys have been through so much. I mean,
Well,
they're
I
all
think
youngins. They all have their
yeah.
whole lives ahead of them. They
I
can't.
think
They can't
that
be like Picard in First Contact. It's like, oh
Right.
fuck them.
I think that the fact that it was Rafi who devised that, which I think was sort of almost a throwaway point, but here was Rafi sciencing it up, and I think that the fact that you had Seven and Rafi together again, which you had this was not only the season finale. I've said this in a previous couple other times, but this is also the series finale. And because of the way they went with season 3, there wasn't a lot of elements of the show that carried through all the 30 episodes, but the Seven and Rafi thing did. And I thought the fact that they brought them together and you saw the dynamic that they teamed up, they worked together to retake the bridge, all of that stuff, everything you saw with those, besides two amazing actresses and Jerry Ryan killing it on 2 series now, and then Rafi, who's taken, this character is only 30 episodes old, right? And that's like only 1 season back in the original Next Generation days, right? It took a season and a handful. And so to see what they've done with these characters, I loved it because it was a good arc that took us through all 3 years, not just the 1 year.
Yeah, and throughout the season, they like the other 2 seasons matter.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you like them or not, in this season they are acknowledged and elements are dealt with and elements are used and actually improve what you might have been like frustrated with in season 1. For example, Picard dying and then just being reincarnated in an exact synth body. I was like, oh, cool. He's the same guy. Whatever. No big deal. But I didn't expect people to be so like... It wasn't exactly anger, I would say. It's just a lot of people making fun of it, poking fun of it over the next 2 seasons. So in this, they gently poke fun. But they're like, we're acknowledging it not for the sake just to poke fun at it. It's this one time in an early episode. It's a conversation between Jack and Riker where they acknowledge it and stuff like that. But we're actually going to use it as a main plot point. And the aromatic syndrome that they brought up in season 1, we're going to use that too. And we're going to, like, it's a very well-crafted show. Like, when in retrospect, like, the Red Door stuff was irritating me. Like, just fucking like, what's going on with Jack? God damn it. Pa Rates? Is it Pa Rates? Is it Red Jack? What is it? people were like, well, it seems to be Borg. A lot of people were saying, well, the clues are saying Borg, Borg. The last 2 seasons dealt with the Borg. Picard seems to be a show about Borg every season, so wouldn't it make sense? Like, nah. Yeah. But then when Marina Sirtis, Troy, I was like forgetting her character's name for a second. Marina Sirtis plays this character in the show. I don't know. But, when she opens the red door and it's the Borg in the like cloudy stuff with the lightning and all, I'm like, cliche kind of like stuff. Rolled my eyes at it. But knowing now that huge, immense Borg cube was in Jupiter and using a transwarp conduit in that planet, I'm like, that's fucking cool stuff, man. I can't deny that. That's some cool sci-fi shit, dude. Like, I can't deny it. And in retrospect, like, I know it irritated me while it was going on, but if I had binged this season, I would have been hard pressed to complain about anything, really. It's just the wait for these certain mysteries become very irritating. And Vatic too. By the time she ended up being dispatched, I was like, okay, good. It's like, finally. Same thing with the Borg Queen. When she's up there, it's Alice Krieg. I know everybody's pronouncing her name Alice Craigie or Kriege, or they're not saying it. Nobody's saying her name right. Her name is Alice Krieg. Alice Krieg, people. Okay? Just want to say. I don't know why I'm off camera all of a sudden. I was like, I forgot to go. But and it's clearly not the actress.
Mm-mm.
It's like it almost looks like a bad dubbing at some points, right? And I'm like, it's on rewatch. It's a little bit better, but as it's going on, as the reveals, I'm like, okay. And what's Picard going to go in there and assimilate himself and be like, well, if you and like I could see everything that's coming, right? Even the Star Wars kind of thing, where like, well, if we blow up the transmitter or the whatever it was, the transponder, it's going to set off a chain reaction.
Yeah.
By the way, they do a thing in the climax, which they do a lot. A lot of people are guilty for it, including previous Trek, especially newer Trek, is where there's a countdown. There's literally like seconds matter, right? I've said this time and time again. And you're like, wait a second. On rewatch, you're like, let me time this shit. You said that if you hit the thing, you have less than a minute. Fucking 3 and 4 minutes and 5 minutes ago. I don't know. I'm not saying 5. But way more than a minute are going by. But then I'm like, okay, if you take the stuff where Picard is resolving stuff with Jack in that void thing, you could say that's time doesn't matter there. So take that out of the equation. It's still like too much. I'm like,
well, there's
way off in
concurrent
those
scenes, I think. I don't think
it's a minor nitpick.
Yeah,
but
I don't think it's consecutive stuff. Like, I think you see what's happening on the Enterprise, and then you see what's happening on the in the Borg Queen's lair. I don't think it's linear. I think they're happening on top of each other.
Yeah,
right.
Okay.
So I think that's
that
part of it. What I thought was very, very cool about this was, the female characters, Beverly and Diana, save the day. Beverly's the one who destroys the Borg cube by deciding and agreeing to fire the photon torpedoes, even though it's going to kill her son, potentially. And it's Diana's Betazoid powers that allow her to lock in on Riker. Right? So there's...
What am I hearing? What am I hearing in the background? Like a dum-dum-dum-dum-dum-dum. Anybody else hearing that?
That's not me.
That might be me.
No,
I might have been,
no, it's not. I just muted you for a second to see if it was, but...
Oh.
No, it stopped.
I think it was me banging my fingers on the desk. I'm sorry.
Oh,
So,
I thought it was interference or something. Anyway, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry about that.
No,
so I think that's, I think that those characters, because there had been discussion through all of this whole season that the female characters are getting short shrift, and they were. But I think that in this finale, key moments, like Beverly being such a badass again, and you bookend the show with Beverly being a badass at the top, it's episode 1, and then you have Beverly being a badass again with that incredible line, "A lot has happened in the last 20 years." Just so well delivered by
So
Gates
good.
McFadden.
Yep.
And then having Deanna save the day with her powers, and it, of course she would know where Riker was there, and for Riker to reach out like that. I heard some people say that it was a communication, it was like a communicator, but it wasn't. It was all Betazoid power.
No, yeah, it was
Yeah.
because when they were in that, it was established that when they were in that zone of the immense, very immense Borg cube, that's I could, I could buy it taking a bit more time than they thought to get to them or something, but yeah, but also it's true. It's like Deanna's there, Beverly's there. It would be a disservice to have them just be like, what, sitting there and just having like the guy like Geordi and Data do all the work type of thing.
Right.
And when that Deanna has that moment, I love it because when Riker says, "I'll be waiting for you with our son," it's a callback to earlier when he talked about like faith or like
Mhm.
there was no evidence to support that there's an afterlife, and
No,
but he has
right.
but in that moment of like, I think I'm gonna fucking die now, he's like reaching out, and I think he knew that she would sense it, but I don't think he necessarily knew she could do anything about. I think it was like too far gone a situation for anybody to save them, so it would be like a last message to her kind of thing, like don't worry, I'll be waiting for you in heaven or something.
That's right.
It's very touching, even though like, so you don't know what you're gonna say in those last moments, right? And the fact that potentially could have been that character's last line.
Well,
Holy
and that
shit,
could be one of the
hits hard.
flaws. One of the
And then she
flaws
says,
in
"I
this
heard
episode.
him," and she goes to the console, and
Yeah.
it's like perfect. And that shot of them looking up and the thing, like all of that is fucking beautifully done. And the musical cues are so on point. Like it's crazy, and it's such a rewatchable episode. I think but that's why people are hailing it as like the best modern Trek episode,
Right.
because it's so well crafted, well directed, well paced.
But one of the things that I agree with everything you said, one of the things that I think they overdid, and I understand why they did it, but it's effective on a first watch and is not going to be anywhere near as effective on a rewatch, is, the idea is that these characters could potentially be about to die. When Picard leaves the bridge and says, "It was an honor serving with all of you." When, Picard and Riker have their exchange, and Worf's amazing lines when he says, "There's two things that a Klingon never admits knowing: defeat and farewell." It's a great, great line. And then the dynamic between Picard and Riker, where Picard says, "It's so hard," and Riker says, "I've always known." I mean, very emotional things. Even the humorous
It's like,
thing. Where,
I know how you like,
Right.
I know. It's
Yeah.
like, and the funny bits too. It's like when Worf agrees to go with them. And he's like, "We'll make it a threesome." And Riker's like, "Do you even hear yourself?"
Yeah,
That got a good laugh.
Yeah.
There was also the one where he grabs Worf's blade, and it's like really fucking. You feel
like,
the weight
shit.
of it when it drops.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's heavy.
shit. It's like, I didn't know it was this heavy. And then he's like, "There's a phaser." He's like, "You had a phaser in here this whole time? You haven't been using?" He's like, "Swords are fun."
Swords are
Like,
fun.
there's a lot of these cheesy lines from Worf that are just like, wow, he's an effective comic relief
He always had been.
character.
Yeah, he'd always
He-
been.
More subtly in the past, though. They
Yeah.
kept amping it up in the movies. I find, like,
Well, even
even
like,
in Nemesis, Picard cracking jokes about Worf having to be naked at the wedding, and
right.
"Oh, a strapping big man like you, what would you be afraid of?" It's like, "Oh,
Romulan-
my two
yeah,
dongs hanging out. What do you think?"
Yeah. And then he'd be, "I'll
Romulan
be."
ale should be illegal. Bonk.
And then the other line where, "For just a moment, I thought we might survive," right? And then the line about, "You seem to be super pleased that we're not, you seem to be upset that we're not overwhelmed here," when they first beam in. And by the way, the Next Generation transporter effect and transporter sound effect. I thought that little
And
things like that.
and the star streaking effect.
Hmm.
Like, yes, no more this, like, I can't look at this warp effect. It's making me dizzy. I'm a light sensitive person, so modern Trek has done a lot to offend me visually.
Mm.
And it's something particular to me, and I'm sure a certain percentage of people. But goddamn, like some of the lens flare shit they were doing in season 2, it's like, where's this light coming from? I became obsessed
Right.
with it. I'm like, why is there light moving all around the screen and there's like no reason? There's literally no logical reason for all of this like this. Why are they paying CG artists to put dirt on like imaginary CGI lenses? Like, they still do it.
Yeah,
They actually
still
do
do.
it. They do it. Picard is throughout the 3 seasons. In fact, I think has been the most delicate. I could say that. However, the way they do it in that particular show, apart from the other shows, is really quite good. Discovery, to give it credit, in seasons 3 and 4, the effects are pretty good.
Well,
In season
yeah.
2, they're very good. It's just that
Mhm.
some of them are overproduced. Where actually you ever watch these videos where they show you the layers that they're putting on the effect? Like, this is how we
Mhm.
do it. This is the most basic, and they keep throwing up the layers. With some of these shows, it's like they should have stopped at layer 5. And they're like, no, but we're not done. Here's some CGI dirt and some more lens flare and some more this and that. It's like, now you've made it look fake. Now you've pushed it beyond the point of looking photorealistic, and it looks like it's artsy fartsy bullshit.
Well, let's take a moment though to say when you talk about Discovery and talk about the fact that this show Picard used many practical effects. Like you could see the VR wall in the later seasons of Discovery. You certainly can see the VR wall in The Mandalorian. You saw the VR wall a little teeny bit in this episode, I think, when Jack and Jack and Picard were standing in that Borg realm. I think that
Yeah.
was the VR wall. But beyond that, they were using practical sets, they were using practical effects. The only thing that they didn't do, and for obvious reasons, is they didn't go back to models. They were all computer generated starships, but they kept it pretty damn close to the kinds of things that made the Next Generation and that era, the Deep Space Nine and Voyager era of Star Trek, very effective practical sets, cutting down on CGI.
And that TNG bridge, that Enterprise D bridge works.
Mm-hmm.
It totally works. And that view screen, that kind of IMAX looking view screen that like it just has no bullshit on the sides. There's nothing going on top of the image. What they do with these things now, where it's like they've gotten better with it, but it's like before, especially with the early seasons of Discovery, it's like they have the image on the screen, but they need to CGI like all the windows reflections and refractions, and plus they need to have 17,000 bits of information going on that nobody's fucking reading, by the way. Who's reading any of that? It never makes any sense. It drives me crazy.
So many people freeze frame the show and read all of that shit.
That's what I'm saying. It's like this little data. It's akin to the random blinky lights from the old sci-fi, which people thought, oh, random blinky lights must mean computer. Cool.
So you don't like the viewer being basically a window, then, because that's what it.
I'm saying they overproduce this shit. They just well, make it cooler. No, make it do more. But see, the JJ films actually started the window viewer thing. To me, it was never that. I don't know what. I thought it was always like blast doors kind of thing behind that view screen. Like it wasn't an actual window out the fucking thing.
Never
it
was.
The whole point of the view screen in the 24th century, to me, because that was what I started. I can go back to TOS and look at that. But in terms of TNG view screens, they were never windows, and never even like. But here's the thing: it was always like you could look straight ahead if you wanted to. There's literally there's a way for that ship to image any part of it. Like if you wanted to look at like the side, this side, that side, the back, like
You could.
not necessarily that there was actual cameras. I thought that there's a different kind of imaging system in the future that doesn't require lenses, which Discovery did touch on because like they couldn't use their imaging sensors. So they're like, we have old school lenses that take pictures. Let's use those and shit like that. But with the thing with the screen and the D, when you see it in the show, even it's so respectful. They don't mess with it at all. It's like clear cut. Whatever you're seeing is like perfect picture that looks like it's really there. Not only that, TNG always didn't follow this view screen rule, but I don't know why they went back and forth. It could depend on the recipient if they have the same technology. But if Picard would stand in front of the view screen and there was like a person's head big on the view screen, and then they went to this angle, they went to a different angle, the angle on the view screen would change, implying that they were 3D. So if you were like to move around, you could actually like, I always thought that was interesting, and not a lot of people have picked up on that. It's strange to me.
The only time that the
Sometimes the images are flat on alternate angles. They don't always do it, but then other times they change the angle with the angle of the shot, the angle on the view screen with the angle of the shot on the bridge. That always fascinated me. I'm like, oh, it's 3D, and like people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Does anybody know does anybody recognize this?
I'm trying to remember.
I've never seen it.
Things.
I've never I'm listening.
You will see it the next time you ever watch TNG.
Yeah.
And they're talking to somebody on the view screen, and they're front on. You're seeing like the back of somebody's head, and then front on.
Yeah.
And then it shows like they go to like a right angle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
then
the
there's perspective on the view screen
changes
on the view screen as if the screen itself is like, holographic.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. I know what you're talking about now.
Which is which is a technology that is not far off.
Yeah.
Right.
We will actually have 3D without the 3D glasses. Have screens that like when you move your head, you can fucking has that effect. Yeah. It won't pop out at you though. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
It's not a pop-out thing. It's just like a depth thing.
Right.
Yeah.
The only time the view screen ever was really kind of a window I could see from all of Star Trek, not counting the JJ stuff, because it was a window in the JJ stuff, was in a Star Trek episode called Requiem for Methuselah, which starts, there was a scene where the Enterprise was in orbit, and then the villain of the piece turned the Enterprise into an AMD model that was sitting on a table. I have one over here, almost the exact same size.
And he peeks
and
into
Kirk
the window.
looks in, and he looks through the window, and he sees the bridge. That's the only time I could think of where they thought the bridge was a window. Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Jill says, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not. I've heard people complain that resurrecting Data is disrespectful to season 1 death. I can't possibly disagree more. If anything, his evolution is more wonderful, knowing a version of him was out there who could no longer go on without a moment of humanity. This version did not suffer that limitation. It's a perfect Data, like the way they brought it. Yeah, it's like I can't. Who loved TNG? It's not like Data's back again. Oh, let's see what they do. Oh, fuck it, it's good. Even I was like, again with the Data stuff. My suspicion was that it was going to be a lore thing. Like, I didn't think, and was for a minute. It was for a minute, but they wrapped it up beautifully. And then Data took over. But Data's not only Data. He's Data 3.0. The Data in season 1 was not the true Data from TNG, just like this Data is not the true Data from TNG. He's like, you could almost think of him as an extended copy, or an evolved version. Like Alton Soon deliberately made a new Data with old Data's memories, which he got from B4, which was not the same Data from season 1. The same Data from season 1 was the actual recreated
Data.
data from his neuron and stuff, which
Yeah.
Right.
it like this is more believable than that shit. Like seriously. And the way they do it, he can be Data, but he can be emotional, but not in the way he was, say, in First Contact or Insurrection, or where he could kind of turn it off and on. Like in Generations, he just couldn't handle it and all this stuff, which was this is one of the worst parts of that movie. It's him freaking
I
out.
actually-
Trying
Well,
to
so
be,
I would argue that there is, the scene where Data is like, "Trust me, I could do this," and he flies the ship Millennium Falcon style. I think that was lore. That was Data getting his lore on, right? And when Deanna says, "Why am I sensing, amusement, enjoyment," right? And you see that look on Data's face where he's got this crazy Joker-esque smile, and that's the lure part of him. They're merged together.
can
Data
you
is
remember if she sensed Lore? Could she sense Lore's emotions back
No.
in TNG? No,
she couldn't sense.
she
I
couldn't
don't-
sense Soji's either.
No. So I think that just goes to prove that these creations are a lot closer to human. And then
Yeah.
the one thing that if you think about it, when Picard plugged himself in and started merging with the Borg, I kept thinking to myself, yeah, this is a synth body, not a human body. But then they're
Yeah.
so close that I could forgive that.
Yeah.
Hey,
No,
Joanne.
but for my money, I mean, for those of you who have been on streams with me before, you know what I'm about to say. I don't like season 1 or season 2 of Picard, so the fact that they gave us this redux data, or this new data, or this data that have memories from
Data Plus.
data, yeah, or the fact that they gave us data plus, I really like that, because I do not like what they did with data in season 1 at all. So bringing back this new, better version of data for me was just so so many levels of enjoyment and so many levels of fun.
Yeah,
Yes.
like it's nothing but enjoyment and fun.
Yeah,
I'm not finding the fault here. You know what I mean? I'm not exactly complaining about people who didn't dig what was going on, but even me as like a critical thinker, I'm like, I can't be against any of this. Even if I was predicting that I would. Even if I was like, well, if it's the Borg, then I think I might be a little bit fuck it. I am not disappointed. It's great. But the greatest thing about the Borg wrap up is that, and they've done this with Vatic, and they've done this with Jack. Once I get to a point with a character, this is Jack, Vatic, and the Borg Queen. It's the same thing. Where I'm like, I'm fucking done with you. You need to shape up and get right, or go home. Like, I'm done with your character. Vatic goes. Beautifully played by Amanda Plummer, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're like, oh, what's going on with Jack? We need to find out. That gets revealed. I'm like, but the way it plays out, when the LaForges are getting assimilated, and then Geordi's reaction to it, and then Data holding him back, I'm like, oh no, well, this actually really works. So like, and like, by the time the Borg Queen is spewing her venom, and because you're not his mother, and blubbity blop and blubbity blue. At the moment when the Borg cube blows up, and she's like, no, and then they all, the old chestnut of kill the queen and the hive is cured kind of thing, which is so cliche. A lot of it's very familiar and cliche, but goddamn, if you can do it well, you do it well. And they did it fucking well. And when she blows up and dies, and I'm like, this seems like the last of the Borg. And we even get the year jump that confirms, like, yeah, we're cool with that shit. Like, sorry about my language. But, and that beautiful, I brought it up earlier, that beautiful effect shot of the Enterprise D. And you're waiting for it too. It's blowing up, where's the D? Where's the Enterprise? And then this little tiny, little cute little motherfucker comes, phew! And it is one of the best feelings to watch something like that. Like, And you know what? I felt so sad when that poker game was going on. I'm like, oh, this is the last scene. They're gonna do the overhead shot, and they do the overhead shot, and that goes on. And like, I was like, I don't want the game to end. That's literally what I kept thinking. I was like, I don't want this to end. Then the QTs. We get a little bit of Q-tip.
Yeah.
We get
Yeah.
a Q-tip.
Yeah, cute. No, I mean, look, I mean, like I've said on those streams, and like I've said to you, fine folks. For my money, this is the best season of Picard ever. I really, really had no, the issues that I had with this season are very, very minor. And as a writer, I'm sitting there going, I could have fixed this, this, and this, and this. But with that being said, I really, really appreciated the amazing story that Terry told us. And there's only a couple things where I'm like, you could have done this instead of this. But that's just a fan of me going, no, do exactly what I want. But other than that, I thought the season was wonderful.
Yeah, the first thing I
Yeah.
thought Picard was going to say to Jack when he went into that thing was like, hey, dude, wake up. We're all going to die if you do this.
We're all
Like, do you want your mother and I to die?
We're all
And
gonna
that would have been
die.
like, oh my god, I can't believe it. Sorry about that, Dad. But but the way they played it really did. I'm like, okay, sure, this really works. He's like, well, son, I'll stay here with you, and he gives him the hug, and then you get the memories with this beautiful score. I'm like, this is funny enough. I never thought I would say this, but this is a modern Trek episode in particular because they nominate certain episodes at the Emmys, but like they could win some awards.
Oh, I think they could definitely win some awards. I thought that Jack succumbed too easily to all of this.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's true.
I-
I think that for Jack to, that's really the only flaw I see in this whole thing is Jack. Jack was a very strong character. It was established through the entire run of season 3 that Jack was he was lonely, but he also stood up for the little guy, and there was a lot of great stuff. And to have him completely succumb to, and to have the board queen say he found me. Okay, that to me I think was a little bit of a disservice to Jack. I didn't buy that, but I know that again,
his reasons for going to her were like, from his point of view, he's like, well, I'm gonna see what she wants, and when I get close enough, I'm gonna take her out. Then when he
Right.
gets there, he finds, oh my god, for whatever reasons, I can't do that. Which, yeah, corny. But then he's like, accepts the assimilation. I thought for like, he had the hubris to think that when he gets in there, he'll figure it out, type of thing. But when he gets, I love the fact that when he gets in there, he's like, oh, because they don't talk about this stuff. I think it's been touched on before in Star Trek about the euphoric feeling of the connection in the hive mind, which Picard, when I was a kid, the way he described the Borg was always like, it was very painful, and they fucking like took parts of you and put machine parts in you, and it was like torture. Like it was like inside you were constantly like,
Well, you
let
saw
me out of
Picard
here.
trying.
But in fact, it was like when you were in there, felt good. And I like how they acknowledge that. And like that's part of the lore. But still, Jack should have been a little more strong-willed. Yeah, sure, but for plot reasons, of course. Like he needs to succumb at this point because of the loneliness that they kept
But I
bringing
don't
up
think-
about the sense
I
of
don't-
isolation and blah blah blah.
Yeah, I don't know where it ever was established that the Borg was ecstasy, except for this episode. I mean,
Not ecstasy, but like the feeling of didn't Seven say something about like I can't, somebody in the chat if you know, like did they ever talk about that before, because I know this is the first time it's come up.
well, in
about-
Unimatrix Zero, I think that's the episode where they had the Borg. Whenever the Borg went into regeneration mode, they ended up on this paradise place, this dreamscape, and they all talked about how, in the Voyager episode, that it was not easy Picard, there was, when Picard in The Best of Both Worlds, you see a tear while he's lying on the table. You see a tear going down his eye as he's trying to fight this thing.
Yeah.
And, it almost made it seem like they confused the Borg reality with the Nexus, and that's not what it was, right? I mean, the Nexus in Generations, that was this ecstasy thing that
The Nexus is more like a mind palace where like things were physically manifested for you. It was almost like a continuous holodeck simulation.
Right.
This just felt like an energy realm that, that Jack and Picard weren't physically standing there, but they were like visual representations of themselves, and I don't know. I mean, you'd think that if assimilation was a thing, that if they were to make you a drone so that your body wouldn't naturally fight and become like, compromised, that they would inject certain chemicals or alter your brain waves in some way where like you accepted it right away. You're like, oh, everything is good about this. Like presumably they could do that. Well, yeah, I understand. Like he's led a lonely life, I guess. All of his, but he talked earlier about how even when he was a kid, he doesn't even remember because it was so traumatic that he had these nightmares and he couldn't sleep for days and stuff. And you're thinking, like, it kind of makes sense that he doesn't remember a lot of that, because when you're severely sleep deprived, you don't retain a lot of memory about your actions, right?
I think, and this may be a little bit TMI, but I think all of us in some form or fashion live lonely lives, right? And I think that, the thing that was the shift for me in this episode was when Jack first started explaining, this is where I belong, and you heard him say before you went into the dreamscape or the whatever it was,
the Borgscape.
The Borgscape, he's saying, everyone, you're going to be there's going to be no more disease. This is it. And then the next minute he's saying target Philadelphia, target New York, target, and he's destroyed the planet. And it's like, that's not the same. There's this shift here, and it's Jack who's saying target all these cities, destroy, and it's the Borg Queen who says it's about annihilation. So there's some. It's possible that Jack was being obviously fed, a pile of crap about this whole idea of it's all beauty and it's all wonderful and it's all ecstasy, and that
it's like a trick. It's a total trick. Yeah. Like you're in your mind, you're in a happy place, but in reality, it's fucking horror.
Right.
Like you've completely been hijacked and taken over. Like you're not an individual anymore. You may think you are, but in a I suppose it may feel like you're an individual in a chorus of voices as opposed to being like not a person at all. I don't know how it would work for them to, for you as a human being, to really acquiesce. But it would make sense to me that like if there was a Borg thing, they would kind of like trick you into thinking like, oh, this is all good, but they overcome it, and the Borg Queen's still like blah blah blah. She's kind of like Jack during this whole season. It's like, yes, dude. Okay, clever lines. Yeah, he talks a lot, dude. Like he's like me.
Yes, BJ, clever lines. Yeah.
But he's always little quips. He's a jokey little fucker, right? He's a cheeky bastard, is what he is. Well, technically, actually, he is a bastard. I'm a bastard as well. Who cares? But once you get to that point where he's standing there with Picard, I was too.
I was a mistake. I wasn't supposed to happen either.
Yeah.
I was not a mistake. Arguably. So.
Oh, yeah.
So go on.
My parents' greatest mistake. No.
No, that's not true at
all. No, but that moment when Picard and Jack are standing there in front of the Borg Queen, and like, I'm in my head. I'm like, I am done with you. I want to kick her off the cliff.
I
Like,
want to
stop it. And then,
Yeah.
and then she's like, "You'll be alone," and he's like, "But I won't be." Like, it's so cheesy, it's corny, but it's like, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's very
also,
powerful.
it's just powerful, man. It's and then the Deanna swoops in and saves the day and beams them all up, and then they're fine. And then she gets all blowed up, and we get that beautiful shot. And then we get that wonderful scene where Jack walks onto the Enterprise D bridge in his tacky as hell Borg motorcycle outfit. It is really one of the worst Borg get-ups in the history of Star. It boggles my mind why they used it.
They
If
used-
there was one thing I could look at and say that didn't work, it's a simple thing. It's Jack's wardrobe.
Right. So they used it because there was a IDW comic book series called Hive a few years
really?
back that Terry Matalas co-wrote, which was about the Borg, and they had that version of the Borg outfits in that comic book series. And so
Oh.
as a salute to that, Terry had that be the Borg outfit that we saw in the finale.
Oh wow!
He looked like a time traveler from the year 2096.
2096.
Like I'm a biker. If some guy came with the outfit and he's like, I'm a biker from 2096, I'm like, dude, I believe you.
I'm a biker.
Anyway, no,
But
it's just
that moment,
but it's
where-
sweet though, where he reunited with his mother, and oh man, it's all beautiful. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that moment where where Picard says, "Welcome to the Enterprise," very powerful.
Yes.
And then they bookend it 10 minutes later when Jack says, "Admiral, welcome to the Enterprise." So in that just in that 10 minutes they built this arc, which I thought was very cool. And now you're getting into all the denouement, right? We're now in the various endings. They had to do because they had to wrap up.
I was sitting here talking to you guys, and Ken just brought it up. I would have really liked if they would have left the Titan alone, and if they would have built like a whole new Enterprise, look. I know that would have been asking a lot because they would have probably had to redesign a new bridge and all that magarble. Just for one final scene, but I really would have liked it if they would have built a new Enterprise and leave the poor Titan alone.
I don't think they should have redubbed it the Enterprise. I thought that was
Yeah,
a little bit cheesy. I think they should have left it the Titan. Although I have to say that when you saw the 1701G and they were pulling
cool.
back, that's one of the big moments in the episode where I got really emotional because, again, I thought about my Star Trek. And I think everybody got a chance to think about their Star Trek. And, like I had said earlier about the Enterprise is all of Star Trek. Even if you think about Deep Space Nine, the episode where they go back in time to the Tribbles, and you
that's a great episode.
Then you see Cisco and just awed by the Enterprise, right? And then even in Voyager, when they have the episode. And these were both 30th anniversary celebration episodes, the Trials and Tribulations episode of Deep Space Nine, and then the flashback episode of Voyager with George Takei as Sulu and Grace Lee Whitney as Janice Rand on the Excelsior. You hear Janeway say, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, all those folks on the Enterprise, Cowboy stuff. So I would argue that the Enterprise has been a big deal throughout the whole show, regardless of whether Enterprise actually appeared in any of the particular series.
Yeah, I mean,
Joanna, I also thought for a second before they showed it would be like the Picard, but then it was the Enterprise. I'm like, oh, okay. And if it's like it's Seven as captain of the Enterprise with like LaForge, and a Crusher on board as well. I'm like, this sold.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I could understand. Like, it is a bit like, let's just rename the Titan A the next Enterprise, because obviously, I guess the F didn't survive or it was decommissioned or something. It got effed. It got effed.
And
Yeah,
also,
God F.
also, it kind of bothers me. I was thinking about this too. When they were doing the pullback that you like so much, it bothered me that the saucer of the Titan doesn't look right. I'm like, I don't like the way the saucer looks, so I'm like, just give me a new ship. What the? It's okay. It's all right.
You know what would be cool? I think they're saving this for Strange New Worlds, maybe. But
It's okay.
if they did a 25th century Enterprise, just like in an alternate ending to this series,
Yeah,
if
it's
they had
okay.
the budget, say, and they said, well, let's have Captain Seven be the captain of the new Enterprise G, but it's not a redo of the Titan. The Titan is still out there. It's maybe Riker has the Titan now again, but have it be like the most. It's a Neo Constitution, but it's like retro designed, so it looks almost like 100% accurate to the original 60s,
Yeah,
but just with the power of a modern ship. Aesthetically, you could do it. I mean, there wouldn't be any technical reasons why you couldn't do it in universe. But I think they may be saving that. Like I said, they may be saving that for Strange New Worlds. To whenever
Well, so
that wraps up.
that's where the incongruity is, right? Because at the Starfleet Museum, you saw the USS New Jersey, which was the 1960s version of the Constitution class.
Yep.
And now you have the Constitution class that's in Strange New Worlds, which is not
It
that.
doesn't look like that at all.
Which you could argue for most of its life, it's been a 2240s, 2250s design. So maybe at some point they have this opportunity with Strange New Worlds. Maybe season 2, maybe season 3, the ship gets like messed up. Like they're going to like have to overhaul this, and they're like, in the meantime, while we redo this Enterprise, we're not naming it an A or nothing. It's literally just like they're fixing it and they're rebuilding it in a certain way. They could make it look more faithful to that 60s Constitution class design. They have that opportunity. But people always argue, dude, it's red. It doesn't look right because it's like, no, it holds up. Look at the Enterprise D bridge. You could look at the sets on the original series. Yes, a little boxy, a little plain looking.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't hold up as I would maintain that the interiors don't hold up nearly as well as the exterior. The exterior of the original Enterprise, you could imagine there's much better looking shit going on in there than what the 60s TV show could give you on that budget. That's why when the movies came along, they made it look more like streamlined and stuff on the inside. But
You know what I just noticed that you're talking now that you're talking about the inside of ships. Just a quick aside here, just really small.
no,
I was watching an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation last night, right? And you know how in most episodes they do that. They an episode starts and they do the zoom in with the, with the top of the saucer section, and on top of the saucer section of the Enterprise D, there's like this little window thing, right? And I was watching the episode and I was like, oh my God, there are people in there. I see people.
Yeah.
Like I've never noticed the little people before. And
that's a little animation.
Yeah, I was watching this episode. I was watching the episode last night, and it's like the first time I saw people in there. Like, oh my God, there's little people. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
in the observation lounge
yeah,
behind the bridge.
In this episode as well, when they do flybys of the D, you can see into the rooms. If you look,
Yeah.
if you
See
just look,
10 forward. You see 10 forward.
you can you can just look right in there. It's all it's so good.
yeah.
It's empty,
awesome.
and that's another question: is why do they have all those lights on if there's no one else on the ship? But that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
We'll forgive
It
that.
seems like light power would be like so easily achievable that you could just leave the lights on anywhere and it would make a difference, like perpetual kind of energy. But I want to say that I love the fact that Raffi. I've been waiting for this. Raffi's finally reunited with her family. It only took them recognizing her as like someone who's saved the galaxy a few times.
20 years.
Right.
She's been involved in like this literal saving of the world 3 times now, and like the family's like, the Romulan, whoever his wife was, she's a Romulan woman, and they only show her in season 1. That's Rafi's daughter-in-law. You have to imagine at some point, the wife says to the son, like, you know, your mother, she saved the galaxy twice. Don't you think you should let her talk to her granddaughter? No, she did drugs. Yeah. Which is understandable. I can understand that. I can understand having fucked up parents. Trust me. But here's the thing. Hey, Romulan wife is like, sorry for calling her Romulan wife. I don't know her name. I forget her name. But she's like, hey, have you seen all the news reports and all the everything on the interwebs or whatever they call it in the future? They're all talking about your mom. All this classified information has been released about your mom and how she saved the galaxy a third time. Well, all right then. She could see her granddaughter. But it was a nice thing that Worf did. It was a nice
thing that Worf did, yes.
It was a nice thing.
No, I mean, look, I haven't. Admittedly, I have not been a Rafi fan since day one, but I really did appreciate. He knows. But I really did appreciate that they gave her that solace and they gave her that little short scene of her talking to her family and indicating that bridges are on the way to being mended with that. Because Rafi was always a really, really sad character to me, and she was always broken. And I'm glad that she kind of is on the way to being healed through her job with Seven now on the ship. I think she can finally move forward now and be the person that she always wanted to be.
It's a character that I think a lot of people feel bad for because in the first season, my God, she's like doing the snake leaf. She's always drunk. She lives in a trailer at Vasquez Rocks, which I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Everybody should have housing, but whatever. I mean, it shouldn't be like I'm forced to live in a trailer. It's like, no, you chose. And that's certainly it was her choice. Probably do something with her addiction. She couldn't be around people, whatever. But see, what they do with her character, it's fine to have a character that's struggling and to explore that. But they saddle her with so much. It becomes pitiful. And you feel bad for the actress, Michelle Hurd, for not getting a chance to kind of shine. And here's what happens in season 1. It gets to such a point where they drag her drunk ass onto the bridge of La Serena to get her to talk to an ex-girlfriend who is in a position of power to help them. They just drag her out of her room just to use her, and then they drag her back and fucking put her in a room again. But here's the thing, there's never a moment where Picard goes to her and tries to help her, and you're supposed to believe that by the end, when they both say I love you, which is a tender moment, you're supposed to believe that he gave a fuck about her when they don't give the Jean-Luc the character any kind of like chance to have any relationship with her when they're both on La Serena. It's just like she's drunk, have Rios or Jurati deal with her, and Picard just basically ignores her. It's really fucking sad.
Well, Picard has always been
she's better in season 2 though. Like I have not a hell of a lot of problem. Jurati was the worst fucking thing in season 2. Rafi and Seven were fine. It's just like they didn't know how to develop that relationship to anything meaningful. It was kind of like just this bitter kind of like, are we or aren't we kind of deal. But you know that thing at the end of season 1 when they both hold hands? Were you personally like, what the hell is that about? Or like that's out of nowhere? Or were you like, oh, they're teasing an upcoming relationship?
You mean Seven and Rafi?
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a very sweet thing. It was a little bit out of the blue, but it was a very sweet thing. And the idea that Star Trek has basically, especially with the later these next generation, so to speak, of shows, to say it doesn't matter who you can love anyone you want to love. It doesn't matter what body parts they have. Love them, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing, to be honest. And it was a little bit out of the blue. There wasn't really anything leading up to that handhold They played it
There,
very
there
well.
literally was not. The people would point to subtle things like when I think there's a scene where one of them's putting handcuffs on the other or something like to play out like a thing they're gonna do later, and there's a
Yeah.
little bit of, but I'm like, no, it just it comes out of the blue. But to me, it was like, oh, they're teasing a relationship in season 2, and then when they did the relationship in season 2, it wasn't that interesting. But at the end of this now, actually, the way they meet in season 3 is like really kind of cute and awkward again.
Hmm.
I'm like, will they like? I'm actually more interested now. And then by the end, when they're on the bridge and Rafi's the number one, I'm like, I hope they're together because that will create a cool thing in a new show where, in front of everybody else, you would never know they were in a relationship, right? This is a cool thing I think they should do. Complete, like everybody knows, but like a new person wouldn't be like, oh, I never sensed or never thought they were actually together. Which I don't think should be taboo in the 25th century. I'm sure there were regulations probably quoted in Star Trek before, but then be damned. But then when they're home, they're like all over each other.
Or
And
in
we
the
get some
corners.
actual like passionate kind of like, let's
Yeah.
listen, I'm not trying to be Messiah. I want to see two women do it. I'm saying like, let's not be afraid of like we're in Canada, you know, we're not too hard up, but we're not too strict on sex in movies. We're more sensitive to violence. In America, it's the opposite. It's like a boobie is way more offensive than somebody getting shot in the chest like 50 times. Strangely enough. So I think there should be some sensuality brought back. Strange New Worlds is kind of going there, but still they're playing it very safe.
And
I don't know what
Discovery
it.
went
I don't know
there.
what it is about shows that
that's right.
like Book and Burnham. They I think they kissed twice or something, but they're such a friend couple. Like I don't like when when Burnham was with Tyler Vox
It was
or
better.
whatever his name was, Tyler Voke.
Woke, yeah.
That was better.
That was actually there was passion there and like an actual sexual chemistry. But it seems like more and more now it's like it's shying they're shying away from that because I don't know if actors feel uncomfortable doing that stuff anymore, but like acting is acting. I mean, you're not doing
Well, I
porn,
think you
people.
see it. You see it on
It's not
Discovery.
pornographic. I'm not talking about straight up nudity. I'm talking about sensuality, but which is I know it's a nicky subject for some people.
Well, Star Trek has not really ever really dealt with nudity or anything like that. But they,
TOS, man, they were pretty much half naked in those. Some of the women in those clothes, they were showing a lot of back, which
they
is
were
which
showing a lot
I'm
of
talking
back.
about racy for the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, probably not.
but
now.
you have not had like a Star Trek nude scene. I think the closest you've gotten is some of the JJ stuff with Chris Pine. But
There's a new there's an
And the
episode of
Klingon.
TNG. Well, yeah, there's Klingon breasts in Discovery, but there's a TNG scene where I forget who it is, but they're painting a nude model, and it's a woman who technically is nude, and it's a full shot of her body on the like sitting on the thing, but she sits in a way, and there's shadow, much like Jean-Luc's nude scene in Chain of Command parts 1 and I think it's 1 or 2, where like you actually see that he is naked. He could, you know, and it's like, but it's his butt crack is obscured in shadow. It's like that's the extent that they've gone to there, but like no, not actual.
right.
We don't need that. But
No, we don't. But we do have you know, same-sex relationships happening in Discovery, and I think that's very powerful. And I think you know they have not. You can see.
And unfortunately, Anthony, what are the characters' names again?
Anthony Rapp.
Colbert and Stamets
Stamets.
Stamets, yeah.
have absolutely no sexual chemistry whatsoever. I don't have to be a gay. I don't have to be a gay person to see that.
Right.
I mean, if you want to look
but
at
the other-
sexual chemistry between two men in a TV show, look at Shameless. Ian and his boyfriend are like dying to fuck each other all the time, and it shows. And
No,
that's
but
that,
the-
but that's a very, but just to be clear, that's a very in-your-face, R-rated kind of show. Just to be clear,
Right.
Yeah, but I think
there's a lot
I
of
think
sex.
I think that Discovery, although they've been very very progressive, they've done a lot of things that a lot of Star Trek shows have never done as far as showing different people being in relationships. But the thing about that is, I don't think that they've taken advantage of that at all. Like Culber's relationship with Stamets, you don't. I mean, you know that they're together, but you don't see their relationship front and center in the way that I would want it to be.
The most passionate relationship I've ever seen in modern Trek is Tyler Volk and Burnham, and that was literally the most toxic relationship. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
and
Well, I guess we can't win.
also, I really like. I don't understand why they, um, the the girl that has the changeling in her head, whatever her name is, and her relationship with
Oh
that
my god, I forget her
individual.
name. Blue.
I
Blue.
forgot her name.
Blue.
Blue. Thank you. Like they had
Oh wait, that's the actor's name. God damn it.
yeah, no, but whatever her character's name is, they had a great opportunity to explore that relationship, but they really didn't do it. And like then Blue sort of leaves for some reason. I'm like, what do you like if you were to introduce a relationship like that, just do something with it. But I don't feel that they ever did anything with it, in my view.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I also think you could see the look. There were some very telling exchanged looks on the bridge
Right
throughout the
between
episode between Rafi and Seven.
right,
You
right, right.
know, when Rafi gave the look to Seven and Seven stood up and say, you know, we're all that's left of Starfleet. You know, you could see that there was
Adira.
right,
That's
Adira.
that's their name. The
Yeah,
character.
yeah,
Right.
Adira, yeah.
And I think you also saw. So I think that you saw that there was a lot of eye acting
Right,
in
Sorry, Jill, I
between
didn't see your
Rafi and
comment in
Seven.
time.
Yeah,
right.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, it's true, Ken. Go ahead. Sorry.
and I also think that there was some really serious eye acting
I-
in the because let's go back to we talked about the amazing eye acting in episode 2. You know
mhm.
that so everyone who was on all these spaces and everything, we're talking about Beverly and Picard and their eye
She's saying
acting.
he's your son with her eyes, and it's like perfect.
Right. Yes,
Right.
and then you've got
And
the
Picard is accepting the information too without saying a word. It's like so good. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
Now you go to the scene in the shuttle where they're flying to the space dock and Jack is pacing back and forth. And the eye acting that occurs there between, Gates and Patrick Stewart, between Beverly and Jean-Luc is there. And I also think that you find, there's some folks who were saying that that Picard and Beverly never touched in the entire show, the entire season. And I think although they didn't show it, you saw Beverly reach out to Picard. And I think that they did probably touch, although the camera angle didn't show it, when Beverly says, we know you don't want to be a show off. We know right before. So that was a very touching moment, a very endearing moment.
So
It seems logical that they would at least be friends if they have this bond now, and they've gone through this ordeal and 30 years plus of 40 years, more than that. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So do you think that off stream somewhere, like they're finally giving it another shot? Do you think that they're going to be together, or do you think they're going to be like co-parents?
It's
Or-
ambiguous. I think it's left up to the. You can say you can come out of the series saying, well, they seem to be at least friends. Well, you could totally in your head canon say, well, they're together too. They went with Jack on his first day on to the Enterprise and blah blah blah.
But
I actually
by the
think
way,
that-
by the way, that little thing where he goes on the bridge and he's like giving the orders and shit, I thought that was pretty funny. And she's like,
Yeah,
"Get
that was
off!"
funny.
There's this
Get out of the
rapport now.
chair.
There's a really good rapport between Seven and Raffi and Jack.
And-
I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a winning cast just in these three. And then fucking Q pops up. It's like, let's do the trial, part 2, bitch.
Ding ding.
Sorry,
I
sorry,
think
my
that,
language, I'm sorry.
I think that Picard is going to go back to Laris.
Oh, wow. Ugh. Ugh.
Laris is like,
You know what?
I'll come along. We'll make it a threesome. And Beverly's
Oh
like,
my
do you even hear
god.
yourself?
Do you hear yourself? Yeah.
Do you hear yourself? No, I mean, look, I mean, you know, I mean, for my Beverly brethren out there, and you know who you are, I felt really, really bad for them that, like Terry had an opportunity to do things with Beverly and Picard, and he just didn't want to go there. Like I just wish that he would have gone there, and we would have got to see them deal with their relationship garbage for the past
I have
35 years.
I have a perfect fake deleted scene that they
Okay.
filmed. Fake now, this is fake. That they filmed, but they just couldn't put it in for time purposes, and it just
All
would
right,
have
okay.
it would have interrupted the flow of everything.
Alright.
It's on the holodeck. Unchained
Yeah.
Melody starts playing. Oh, my love, my darling. Beverly is doing some pottery. Picard, shirtless and glistening, comes up behind her, and they start to recreate the scene from Ghost from 1990 with Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. And it's like, my darling, I long for your touch. And it's hot as hell, and the censors were like, no way, we can't have geriatric passion like that.
Geriatric Passion, which is the name of the spin-off show, Star Trek Geriatric Passion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
I
soap
know.
opera.
Look, because look, all throughout Next Generation, regardless of who you speak to, Gates and Patrick Stewart have always said that they always put a little extra into those scenes, and I'm really, really upset that kind of the only relationship that was really paid off brilliantly was Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, and the only reason that relationship was paid off was because they said it. They're the ones that came to the writers and said, "You guys should do this" at the end, and
The
they
actors
did.
said it, yeah.
Yeah. And the actors said it, and they did, and then we got what we got. We got them together. So I'm really disappointed. Look, again, I love what Terry did for a large part of the season, but I'm really disappointed that he had a chance to sort of give like Patrick Stewart a good romantic closing with Beverly.
But
You
Patrick-
know,
He's 117. Does he need it?
Yeah.
And
But
Picard
but
was
it's
never
really
a-
about a father-son thing, isn't it? It's mostly
Yeah.
about
Right.
the father-son story, and
Right,
that's
right,
And Picard was never a romantic character.
right.
Never
That's
was.
true.
Right.
That's true.
He's never, the romance was never his. They were like one-off episodes here and there, Vash and so forth. But there, the romantics. Picard was never a romantic character. And so
the thing he was most romantic about was artifacts. Like his
Right.
Indiana Jones side was the most romantic part of him. Say,
Right. He was romantic. Yeah. He was romantic about the mission. He was romantic about the mystery. He was romantic. Just like Kirk also was a romantic character in the sense that he already has a relationship. You said it multiple times in the show. I already have a woman to care about. Her name is the Enterprise, right? And so that the captains, none of the captains, with the exception of Cisco, maybe because Cisco ended up with a relationship with Cassidy Yates, and so that did happen. But you don't. I mean,
Jill, I think he was 96 in the first season, wasn't he? At this point, he's probably 100. He's probably 99 or 100 in season 3, right? Picard. The timing is off too. Like Jack's age, is he 20 or is he 24? Like it's all weird.
I don't know.
It's like Nemesis took place in 2379.
No, but
if it's 2403, yes, he could be 24.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming it's the year 2304, Picard was born in 2303. Sorry. Assuming the year is 2404, and Picard was born in 2305, he would be 99. If that, but they never outright stated the year. It's supposed to be 2401.
Yeah, I
Okay.
just
I don't know.
just the fan in
20th
me
century.
of the whole Beverly and Picard thing. I don't know if other people got in my head. Probably other people have gotten in my head. That happens to be a lot. But I just wanted, just to really, I just didn't acknowledge, just like a sort of acknowledgement of how they feel about each other. But you could have said that about the way that Beverly first comes onto the scene when she comes onto the bridge for the first time. She just has that look. That to me could have been like, okay, just by that look, you can tell how much these people really care for each other. That could have been
Okay,
Terry
so
sort of
if it's 200, if the last episode takes place on Frontier Day, which would be April, sometime in April of 2401, yeah, because he says 150 or 250 years. So Frontier Day was 2151 plus 250 years, 2401. Okay. Just to be clear about that, I don't know, just making sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't believe PJ was calculating.
Jack could be. Jack is 22 at the oldest. Like, what's going on? Anyway.
Oh my god! I cannot believe PJ was calculating star dates while I was trying to give my Beverly and Picard.
Oh, by the way, speaking of star dates, it's an excellent thing that Riker had his log. He's like, let's just call it day 1.
Yeah, Stardate 1. Right.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah. Also, I got to point out that I just realized what shirt you were wearing, Ken, and I think it's genius. I love that shirt.
Yep.
I love that shirt. Like, guys, if you're a Star Trek fan and you don't know that date, shame on you. Yeah.
I predicted Riker was going to die. Somebody else, like...
Yeah, that was a bit weird that nobody died, right?
They did say before, Terry or whoever else, legacy characters, they all won't make it out. And Ro and Shelby didn't bite the dust. So there you go.
No, but
Tuvok survived.
But if somebody...
Oh, by the way, can I speak of... We never talked about this scene. We got to talk about it.
Okay.
Tuvok and Seven.
That was great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Tuvok's like, you've been pardoned of commandeering this ship and blah, blah, blah. And Seven thinks like she's getting dressed down, which kind of she is. And she's like, I'll save the trouble. I resign. I know I'm no good. I'm too good, maybe. I don't know. She's like, I'm not for the Starfleet peoples. And then he's like, hold on. Here's what Shaw said right before you hijacked the ship. You sent off your review, and he recommends you for captain. And then Tuvok's like, resignation denied. And captain, I'm like, fuck yes, man. How could you do this any better? Like, Seven needs a ship. You got to give her a ship. In case she gets the Titan, that's what you think. Boom! It's the Enterprise, motherfucking G. Yeah. And you're like, how are they not making a show now about this very thing?
They probably are.
No,
they're probably
they should. They should definitely.
You know what?
Doing that now.
You know what? I think they're going to announce it. In
Star
September.
Trek Day.
On Star Trek Day. Thank you.
Okay, guys, we're running out of time here.
There's one more thing.
We don't want to go over 2 hours, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. There's one more thing that I've heard no one discuss on any spaces at all, and I want to bring it up here, and that is, if we recall the episode "A Fistful of Datas" from the original show, and Data in this episode of Picard sitting at the station saying, I think we are the cavalry. He took on a Western voice just like he did in that show. It's so subtle, but you could hear that voice. He's like, we are the cavalry. I thought that was very, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I
Yeah, a
really,
lot of people thought Janeway was going to show up, but they'd said a couple of times that she
they
wasn't
wanted
because
to.
they wanted to keep all that in Prodigy territory.
Janeway
And
was
another thing
scheduled to
about
show
cameos
up.
that they wanted to do, I'm sure they need. Here's the most one of the most awkward parts of the finale, which I said, "Oh, that's strange," but immediately kind of understood probably why. Was when they're at the bar and they're like, "Guidance been giving us the side eye," and I was like, cut to shot of Whoopi Goldberg, didn't do it. I'm like,
Nope.
okay, I guess time constraints and budget or something. I don't know. Some things you could tell they wanted to do and they couldn't. But yeah, I'm sure if Janeway, they could be in it and they had the time and whatever. I'm sure if Alice Krieg, if they had the time and money to do that with her, and she could have been there. And you know what? It would have worked because she's not to put her down. She's an elderly woman now. She's much older. She's like the age of the rest of the cast. So if you showed her like that, it would be like makes sense.
It'd be a lot of makeup to put on someone.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably
Yeah.
really.
Would have been a lot of prosthetics and stuff to put on someone.
But I would
that-
maintain that if they used her, they wouldn't have to do such an
Maybe.
asymmetrical kind of like deal.
The thing they also didn't quite explain, although if you think about it, it's kind of obvious, is that Vadic's head was the Borg Queen. But you don't really...
You don't get that sense when you rewatch it, though.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't. You can. It's okay. It's the Borg Queen, but her voice is altered so much, and
Right.
you could buy it, but it's a stretch. It really is.
Also, I think it's important to say that
And it's not Alice Krieg doing the voice. It's not Alice Krieg's
no,
voice.
not in those scenes. No, unless it's really, really.
It's a voice. It's some kind of random voice actor who's doing
Yeah.
it.
So,
Amanda
no, but
Plummer.
I
Amanda
thought- no,
Plummer
but-
did. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, Ken. I thought that was really Alice Krieg. It wasn't Alice Krieg.
No, not as the floating head. You know, when Vadic cuts off her head and communicates with the Borg Queen.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like the Borg Queen at all in retrospect because of the voice change, and it turns out it's not even the same. It's a different actor doing that voice.
Right.
It's supposed to be the same character, though, but it's just Alice Krieg shows up at the end. And the voices that Jack is hearing, you're hearing familiar voices like Beverly and stuff. And they only...
Yes.
I don't know if they sneak in Alice Krieg's voice here and there. I must have to rewatch
Well, towards
it.
the end, when you know it's her, it's absolutely her.
Yeah, it's absolutely her.
When you hear the "Find Me," when it goes to black and you hear "Find Me," I think that's her. Also, although obviously she wasn't in the last couple of episodes, Amanda Plummer just stole this season in so many ways. I would argue she was just so good, right up there, one of the top Star Trek villains. While I would disagree that this is the best season of Star Trek ever, and we'll have that discussion another day, Amanda Plummer, I think, is one of the best Star Trek villains ever. She did just a fantastic job.
She was better than the material and better than the character was.
Yeah.
Like she's transcended. Like I maintain that if you had a less competent actor in that role
Would never work.
that played it just in a generic, flamboyant kind of haha, I'm a villain kind of way, or I'm a crazy villain kind of way, like somebody's cheap imitation of the Joker or something, would have fallen flat probably. But I think her inflections is what sells it. Like the way she formulates her lines, like it's just real weird. It's
And it was just icing on the cake that she was Christopher Plummer's daughter and the tie into Star Trek that way. But it was just so well done.
Speaking of icing on cake, like
Wait a minute.
they just throw the candy and the icing and the everything at everything. Like they're just like, let's lather it up with more sugar and fucking
Oh
goodness.
my god! I just realized that. How did I not realize that? I'm so dumb.
It's like
Christopher Plummer. and
yeah,
Amanda
I just
Plummer?
realized. Oh my
Yeah.
god! I just realized that. What the
Yeah.
hell? Oh my god!
So let me
Okay.
ask you, I know it's your show, PJ, but I have a question for all three of us. What is, if you had to isolate one scene or one moment from this season that is like the moment that you think was so cool, what would be your top moment of this season?
The end of episode 3 when Riker realizes he's fucked. And there's a moment where it's like 20 seconds on his face. And Frakes doesn't say a word for those 20 seconds. But in that time, you're just trying to imagine what thoughts are going. It's like, I'm never going to see Amzadi again. Kestra's going to be father. Like all the worst thoughts you think when you're sure you're about to die. And it turns into anger. And then he turns to Picard, get off my bridge. And that ending in that moment, and Picard goes off, that always sticks out to me as like the holy shit, that's gold. Yes, there's a lot of stuff in the finale, but I mean episodes 3 and 4, if you want to like forget about 9 and 10 for now, those were the height of like dramatic tension in that series. It still goes on, like episode 5 is good, and then episode 6 is good. 7 and 8 is where you're like, let's come on, let's go. We're dragging it out a bit. I know it seems like you're stretching out the budget a little too much here. I know it's still expensive as hell, but you know it's like let's get past this because it had a good pace. Like I said, on the binge though, if you were to watch it, like if you watched episodes 1 to 6, like people had access to, I could see how you're like, yes, this is good. And then furthermore, if you had 7 to fucking, what is it? 7 and 8, and then you got to watch 9 and 10 right after, I think you'd be hard pressed to like complain about 7 and 8. But it's just
Right.
the weekly thing. It's like, it's not moving fast enough. Jack Mystery's pissing me off. But overall, it stuck the landing. It really did.
It definitely stuck the landing. And I think I haven't watched it as a binge yet. And I think anyone who was watching it as a binge, like you just said, PJ, it's going to hit very differently being able to watch it like an extended movie now, as opposed to having to wait week after week. So I'm looking forward to watching it as a binge. For me, because of the nostalgia of it all, I mean, to me, the thing I could watch again and again and again is 7 and Jack looking at the ships at the museum.
Yeah.
The Defiant and the New Jersey and the Enterprise and the Bounty and the Voyager, of course. And the way that the music, some people said that the music shifting theme to theme pulled them out of the episode, and I can understand that. But for me,
and
I
the
thought it
recurring
was
theme
just
of family too, that's
Yep.
in that scene.
Yeah.
Finding family and people who are probably not technically your family.
No, for me personally, my favorite episode of the entire series is the
Scene.
episode where the scene. Sorry, scene. Thank you.
Yeah.
Scene. Correction. My favorite scene is the scene when Data is talking to Lore and he's giving him all his old trinkets, and how Data says, "I'm going to give you my old trinkets because I just realized that you have wanted to be loved your entire life and just that
You've
whole
had nothing and I've had so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just that whole scene, that scene to me was the primary reason why that episode in particular is my favorite episode of Modern Trek ever. There's something about Data coming back, and there's something about him dealing with Lore and him reconciling with Lore and him.
That's episode
eventually
8, right?
Yes, I think so, right? Somebody help me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And him, eventually integrating with Lore himself, I thought it was so wonderful.
Goodbye, brother. Which is they say it's an homage to that Kirk. What's that one? The Enemy Within.
The Enemy Within. It was homage to two things. It was the homage to Descent Part 2 because they had the same thing. Goodbye, brother, with Lord gets shot.
Yeah.
And then an homage to The Enemy Within when the way they're hugging on the transporter platform
also,
when they do the beam.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I know you asked for one scene, but I'm going to put just a little extra.
Very little.
Yes, a little extra, tiny little extra. When the moment when they're all in the conference room together and just sitting around the table, I love that stuff.
Yeah. Jill has a really good comment in the chat. Another great scene when Data
She
stops
says,
Geordi.
my moment is when Data stops Geordi from rushing to his assimilated daughters with no plan, and Beverly touches Geordi's shoulder from behind and he relaxes. Something about that really got... That is a really good moment, yes. He's like...
And
Data's like...
yeah,
He's like, what are you gonna do? He's like, we need a plan. And like, Geordi's like, yes, he regains his objectivity. By the way,
Yeah, you're right.
bravo to LeVar Burton as well, especially in this finale as captaining the Enterprise D. And that whole exchange between him and Data's like, I know it's an improbability, but I can do this. I feel it in my gut. And Geordi's like, your gut! Geordi's like stressed out. Like everybody's stressed out, but the way Geordi plays it, he's like, all right. And then like the looks between him and Beverly, like the wordless exchanges that happen throughout the show.
acting.
Like, this is a reflection of experience as well.
Of course.
It's not to say that young people can't do this. It's just that experience has value, and I think some of these actors know what the fuck they're doing at times. And I'm sure there's been times when they've been in Trek with like, this is whatever. I'm just going along with it. It doesn't mean much to me. But you can kind of tell that this means a lot to these actors, and they're putting putting everything they got into it. It's so fucking good.
No, I know, and also, it really says a lot that to do this, it says a lot that when Terry had the idea to bring everybody back, it says a lot that they all came back, like you know, like the wonderful thing about the TNG cast in general is that they really love each other, and that's not the same with the TOS cast, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah, but I just really like that. I just really love that all these people have genuine love for each other and like hanging out together. I think that's so cool.
So Joanne's
They would
comment.
be at,
Joanne's comment about her favorite
her
moment.
moment. Yeah.
Worf introducing himself to Rafi just beautifully summarizes all that he's overcome. That was true. That scene where he introduces himself and the chamomile tea. That was a great scene. And by the way, Michael Dorn, we're talking about LeVar Burton. Michael Dorn, unbelievable. Just Worf. You see these actors, you see these characters in ways you have never seen them before. And it reflects 25 years of growth from both the point of view of the characters and the actors. It was just great.
More than 25 years.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
37? No, wait,
Well, since Nemesis.
1987.
Since Nemesis, how long has it been since Nemesis?
36
guys?
years since they started as these
Since
characters.
they started. That's
36.
Right.
It's crazy. That I'm older now, and stuff that I watched when I was a little kid, this TV show TNG, that I was like, this is the coolest thing ever, and like didn't even understand all the nuance of like the world or didn't understand a lot about it when I first watched it, but it was engaging, to use that word.
Engaging.
And the most beautiful thing about it is that Star Trek is something that you can watch as a kid, then rewatch at different times in your life, and either learn something or get something different, or have a different experience every time. The movies, maybe TNG movies, not so much. They're little generic action movies. They're still great in their own little ways. First Contact is good.
Yep.
But I see the original series movies are a little more classic, like great. There's a little more. They're more satisfying in my view. But,
right.
All right, guys.
Jill said, this is the most positive chat I've been on since this aired. I feel so much better now.
Hey.
Thanks, gents. You're welcome, Jill, and thank you, audience. And thank you, PJ, for pulling this all together.
Thank you.
And putting on another great show. I really appreciate you.
I wonder the complaints if, like, the last episode, they're like, Worf, Riker, Geordi, Picard, Jack survive, Troy, Beverly, 7 Raphael died
die.
to save the
Wow.
men. To save
That would have been bad.
They were like,
that would have been
"Nah!"
so bad.
I would have been pissed. I was like, no,
That
that's
would've
crazy.
been
What are you doing?
That would have
Yeah,
been so
they would
bad.
never have done that.
But I don't. I've heard. You hear people complain about this and that, which is fine. I don't care. Like, complain about what
It's
you want.
fine. It's fine.
I just find, in general, aside from complaints here and there, the general consensus seems to be, yeah, this is pretty good.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
it was really good, and I don't think there was any weak acting or production at all. I can't point to a weak side in front of or behind the camera. There's just they put together a great team, cast and crew, and the accolades everyone's getting, they are so well deserved.
Well deserved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, before we go, do you want to briefly touch on just a few little Star Trek tidbits that have come out? Like, for
Sure.
example, the very first Star Trek streaming movie in
Yes.
the form of a Section 31 starring the legendary Michelle Yeoh, playing probably one of the worst characters in Star Trek. But she, legend, accomplished actress.
Academy Award
Like,
winner.
If I was going to be attacked in an alley, I would want Michelle Yeoh now, at her age now, coming out
Absolutely.
defending my ass, because I know she can kick it.
Well, I love that they're doing this. As soon as she won the Oscar, the chances of her coming back for a series was just
We're
going to
not
get
good.
less and less. But
Do you think she went to Paramount? She's like, my price is a little higher now, thank you. They're
Probably.
like, oh, we figured.
yeah, probably.
Probably.
And the idea about doing these one-off movies, these character-based movies or scenario-based movies, is exciting to me, because now you could go and say, let's do Kieran DeReese, let's do Miles O'Brien, let's do whoever, and do these
F
stories.
short treks. We need long treks.
Right,
Long.
right,
There you go.
yep.
Sorry.
And we know Kieran. You know that Nana Visitor wants to come back. Terry Farrell wants to come back. So many of these folks want to come back. I mean,
Oh my
not-
God.
How is Terry Farrell going to come back?
I don't know.
Oh, they could
They'll
figure it out.
You know
They can
what?
figure it out.
Actually, you know what? The simplest thing: mirror universe or twin.
Twin. There
She
you
had
go,
a
twin.
she had a
Oh.
twin sister that they just never mentioned.
That
People
nobody
were like,
mentioned.
"Hey, she should have
Or-
mentioned her." I'm like, the characters don't have to mention every sibling they have. It's just not a realistic expectation to have.
Or
Anyway.
Q.
There you go.
Always gotta
Q.
do
That
Bring
I
it back.
find if Q's gonna start bringing people back from the dead in Star Trek, I think it's a bit of a cheat, unless you're going to an
Yeah.
alternate timeline or time travel. But there's
No,
always
but
a possibility that Terry Farrell could come back somehow. It's a
you know-
possibility. It's science
with-
fiction. They could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the whole movie thing now, I think it'll be real. I mean, this would be expensive to bring everybody back, but it would be really cool if they decide to bring like the do like an Enterprise movie, like to
You mean from the Enterprise series?
Marcelo,
yes,
you
yeah.
wouldn't believe the minds that would be melting.
yeah.
Like just liquid pouring out of the eyeballs.
What?
If you announced Scott Bakula, and
Is
too bad
back,
Connor
yeah.
Trenier couldn't come back, but Scott Bakula and crew, Romulan War fucking movie.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, they did the novels, and the fact that they put a huge salute on Archer's Enterprise during Frontier Day. Never mind,
Oh,
no
yeah.
reference at all to Captain Kirk and that Enterprise. It's all Archer and his Enterprise, which was
Archer.
kind of a little annoying, but whatever. So they could have queued that up too. Again, no pun intended. So, or Riker and Troy could just go back on the holodeck and just watch another couple episodes of it.
Oh my God, no!
Yeah.
All right, let's
All right.
move on before we go for good. The Strange New Worlds trailer for season 2.
Eh,
Pretty. It's pretty. But it
yeah.
looks pretty
pretty.
silly as well. It looks pretty silly.
Yeah.
Fucking Kirk. Like, why are we doing Kirk again? I swear to God, if him and Pike sit down and have dinner, I'm gonna be like, nope. You just don't care. Why is it that some shows can care so much and then others are just like, fuck it? Prodigy, for example, is
Prodigy's
extraordinarily
great.
faithful.
Yeah, Prodigy.
It's the best one besides this new season of Picard. It's the best thing modern
Well,
Trek has to offer.
what I'm thinking is, my concern with Strange New Worlds is they're gonna screw around with continuity, and they're clearly already screwing around with some continuity with having the Klingons look like. And again, you're not gonna have the Klingons look like the blackface,
No, no, you're not gonna do that.
kind of Klingons from
Oh,
the
Ken, I've got to tell
1960s.
you my theory that everybody has heard a million times, but you haven't,
Okay.
about how to resolve that issue. Marcelo, you probably heard me say this a
Yes,
couple
I
of
have.
times. But if you were to do a modern version of the TOS Klingons, just suspend a little bit of disbelief and imagine them as what Nicholas Meyer presented in The Undiscovered Country. Now, in The Undiscovered Country, that is the most subtle, ridged forehead Klingon makeup that there is. They basically look like, a lot of them look like they have human heritage compared to Part 3, Part 5, or the TNG or DS9 or anything like that. Where they're
Well, the Chang
very-
character did.
yes, but you look at every other character, a Klingon character in that movie, it is the most subtle of the ridged version of Klingon makeup. It is the one. It is an oddity in the fact that it is almost a completely separate Klingon makeup design from what we've seen in any other thing. And I always maintain that using my imagination when I saw that, not as necessarily the first time when I was a little kid, but when I had the DVDs, I'm like, and at first I'm like, yeah, like Christopher Plummer's makeup was really subtle, and even his officers, like it's not as heavy. The makeup's not as heavy. And I just thought to myself, oh, this is their version of what the TOS Klingons were. Like they're showing, because you can't have actors in just the Fu Manchu mustache, and it's offensive.
Right.
It was accepted at the time because it's aliens, but really some of the aliens were like racial stereotypes or bits and pieces of different racial stereotypes. So
Right.
in the movie,
Rengi,
when they did the movies, they're like, we'll just retroactively say that they all look like this. Then Enterprise had to come along. You know when Worf said in Trials and Tribulations to Odo,
They are Klingons, and it's a long story.
we don't discuss it with outsiders.
Yeah.
I thought that was the perfect stamp to put on it to say, we don't need to worry about this anymore. But then Enterprise came along and said, augment
God.
virus, and this is why they look human, and blah, 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 and this and that.
God.
I thought that was going a bit too far, but if you were going to explain it, sure. So my theory is, like, if you were going to do a Klingons in Strange New Worlds, then you would have the same kind of makeup design as you had in Star Trek 6. So that when people say, oh, that's not what they look like in TOS, you could at least say, well, they're the most human looking, so there's kind of a connect there, and there's kind of a compromise to be made.
Yeah. that
And
makes
nobody,
sense.
I don't know, it's just a thing.
No,
Gone
I
on way
thought-
too long about that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I thought the trailer was
Clinging
the trailer
on
was
to
good.
that talk.
I thought the trailer was good, but like you, Ken, I'm a little bit worried that it's gonna become Captain Kirk and Pike's crew together, and I don't want that. I made a video when
Yeah.
Paul Wesley.
I
when
suspect
Paul
Captain
Wesley,
Kirk is only in 1 or 2 episodes, probably even just one. There seems
Yeah,
to be
I
a
made a-
time travel kind of episode.
It
With
sure
him.
does. Seems to be a time travel
Yeah,
to a
And
Yeah,
Khan's
I made a-
granddaughter, mind you.
right.
Come on, oh Jesus. Anyway,
I made a video when Paul Wesley was first announced of how I didn't want Strange New Worlds to become Captain Kirk and Captain Pike. And funny enough, on that video, Bob Orsi, who watches my stuff every now and then, commented on the video, and he offered to ask Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonzo Myers if they were going to include Kirk into the into the overall show for me. He still hasn't got back to me on that, but
They're
I
not.
kind of-
They're not
I
going
hope
to.
not.
can
They're going
we
to
just?
just a couple of episodes. That's it.
Jill brings up a good point. The the Klingon ridges look so rubbery though. It doesn't look. I appreciate that they're doing traditional looking.
They look
but
rubbery.
it looks weird, doesn't it?
It looks no.
Like
Well,
they
it's
have.
possible that it's not. Maybe it's still not full production. Maybe it's not finished. Who knows? But
Oh no. I mean, if it's finished makeup, it's practical finished makeup they show in the trailer. Like a lot of this
Right.
stuff looks very polished and finished. I mean, it looks good. Like it looks very expensive. But it's
Yeah.
like when they do that close up of that one Klingon, there's like it. One thing, they all have the same looking rigid. Like it looks very simplified. It looks like a simplified version of TNG, and I fear that's their Star Trek 6 Klingon solution.
Yeah.
Like
also,
my solution would be just make them really subtle, so that people would say, "Oh, they're the more human looking Klingons. This fits," as opposed to, "Oh, they look weird. Why don't they look right?" I don't know.
Also, I really want one thing out of this new season of Strange New Worlds. I want number one to have a little bit more to do, because
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not crazy.
No.
I felt that the tremendously talented Rebecca Romaine was never there, and it really bothered me. Rebecca Romaine's character, number one, is the second most powerful person on the entire ship, and she was never there except
And
for
she's
the
named
pilot.
she's named after the most popular lettuce I don't understand.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Lettuce?
seriously, she was. I do agree with people who say she was a bit underserved in season 1. She needs
Yeah.
to have a better, juicier kind of chunk in season 2.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'm willing to give it another shot. I mean, I liked the first season. There were things I didn't like about it, but I went along with it.
Can I ask you what you thought about the Gorn and what they did there, which is offensive to me? Offensive.
Well, yeah. So, as a TOS person, you take things too far. Like you had you had the Gorn in Enterprise, right? In the mirror universe episodes of Enterprise, and I thought that was okay. Because you're not going to have again a guy in a rubber suit walking really slow at Vasquez Rocks. I get
Yeah.
that, but
The guy in the costume is like, "I'm dying in here, man. I'm dying."
yeah. So you got to have a logical evolution, and now to turn these things into these evil dinosaur-like
Xenomorphs.
xenomorphs, right? They're closer to alien than they
In
ever
this
were to
trailer,
Gorn.
they mimic a shot from Alien 3.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
I
Like
do-
why? What? It's so blatant. They think it's
And I
fun.
also-
They think it's funny. I don't know.
Yeah, and I also don't like that they've made the Gorns the big bad, because it's pretty clear that Kirk has no idea what a Gorn is when he finds them after the Battle of Cestus 3, right? So that and I
And the
don't
thing
like-
about the Gorn is that they're not mindless monsters. They're
They're
actually
not.
intelligent, space-faring
right
species.
captain of a starship like myself, as Kirk says. And yes, absolutely. So that's now people are saying maybe there's different factions of Gorn, maybe there's intelligent Gorn and non-intelligent Gorn and all this stuff. Like, if you've got to turn things into a pretzel to make it work,
Yeah.
it's not working. So
What did you think of
Also-
the last episode with the recreation of
the recreation of Balance of Terror.
Balance of
So
Terror? Yeah.
I thought that in some ways was very creative. When I first watched it, I found myself mouthing along with some of the dialogue, and I thought it was very interesting to say, okay, we're going to have these actors, Ethan Peck and Celia, forget her name, but please,
Gooding.
you have Celia Good. So you have Uhura and Spock doing some of the Uhura and Spock stuff. I thought it was an interesting homage to it, and I liked the idea of Spock's the one who dies, and Spock has so much galaxy-saving stuff to do. I liked that, but the concept of thank you, Celia Rose Gooding. Thank you, Jill. Always can count on you. From the nostalgia point of view, I thought it was kind of interesting. From the plot point of view, and serving the ongoing plot of the show, bringing in Paul Wesley as Kirk, and it's not Kirk because it's this alternate Kirk and all that kind of crap. I like seeing some of the scenes being recreated. I like some of the nostalgia homage to the nostalgia, but the rest of it I thought was a bit of a stretch.
No, but here's the question.
The spirit of that episode was lost. They couldn't recreate it. It's
right. Well, the Romulan commander piece is completely gone. The whole dynamic of in another reality, I could have called you friend.
Yeah.
Here was another reality. Wouldn't it have been interesting if Ike and the Romulan commander became friends? That would have been like living up to a dialogue point from 1967.
Yeah, here's another question that I have for the panel, just really quick before we go. Like, why do you think Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonso Myers got the good idea of bringing Kirk in? Like, for what? Why?
People suspect that they're trying to do it, like they're going to redo TOS at some point. I think that's a legitimate fear.
Oh God.
But,
why?
I mean,
it's
stop. Like, you gave Pike his own show, and it's like, now here's Kirk.
Oh God.
Pike not good enough now? What's going on? Same thing with what they did with Discovery. Like, we don't think this show can survive on the strength of just the characters we've introduced. Spock and Pike got to come in and save the day, which worked to some degree, but it's good and bad.
Well, it was true that at the end of season 1 of Discovery, when the Enterprise shows up and they make this whole big deal, it's like, okay, this is a Hail Mary to get people back to pay attention to the show. It's the Enterprise, folks. Hello, come see shiny thing. And it kind of worked, right? And I think Strange New Worlds has potential. I think that, I would love to see Dr. Boyce. I would love to see it a little bit closer to what they showed in the Menagerie. I like that they use some of the sound effects. Again, the sound design is interesting. The transporter sound effect, for example, is a sound effect from the Menagerie and not the original series. They have that little tinkling in there that's a little bit different. So I like that. But the Pike character that we see in Strange New Worlds is very different than the Pike character that you saw in the Menagerie and the Cage. Jeffrey Combs would be fantastic as Boyce. I think you've got to and I also think that they have radically changed the character of number 1. Now, obviously, there's some things that you can't do. Like in the Cage, Pike says, "I'm not used to having women on the bridge." Right, so there's this. You can't do any of that.
They're also getting faxes on the bridge too,
and they're getting faxes on the bridge and stuff. So you have
in the original series, apparently women weren't allowed to be captains. So,
well, that's
all that can be retroactively kind of thrown to the wind, kind of stuff.
So, Turnabout Intruder, that woman was crazy. That is actually not. My headcanon is that is not really. They couldn't say women couldn't be captain. But anyway, that's a whole other.
She was just a hysterical woman. I get no.
and they changed Chapel. Jill's right. Chapel came aboard the Enterprise to find Roger Corby.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Now the folks at Strange New Worlds have said, "Don't worry, we've got it. We'll see Roger Corby."
We don't. No, you don't.
So some of that stuff,
but.
What do you think we'll see Sarah? Not Sarek, Cybok, because they teased him.
Cybok, yeah, we're going to see Cybok. Where's Layla Kalami? That's who we should see. We should see a Layla Kalami. Why? What they're doing with T'Pring makes no sense, right? That's
but the other thing that I want to mention that I really liked from season 1, I also really liked the chemistry between Spock and Chapel. So I'm like, why even bother with Corby? Why even bother with that? Why don't you do something that's really going to tick off a lot of people and explore a relationship between Spock and Chapel? If you're going to be
wasn't there. That's true. The Spock and Chapel relationship was not there. That developed during the original series and didn't even really develop so much. It was more like Chapel pining for Spock and Spock. Anyway,
I can imagine that at some point in Strange New Worlds, they probably do get together, and it's like a relationship that doesn't last very long and doesn't go well and doesn't end well. So by TOS, there's that tension between them. Do you remember when Spock is going through the pond fire and Chapel's trying to serve him like some dinner or something? And, like he
Yep.
fucking throws the tray. He's like, "Oh, get out of
What
here!"
is this? Yeah. If I wanted your help, I'd ask for it.
Like
Exactly.
It seems like he has some kind of, I don't know, resentment toward her or something.
Could
And
be.
she still kind of maybe pines over him because he was such a great, lover.
But this is what's going back to Picard. This is what's very interesting. Picard season 3, everyone has loved it in some form or fashion. The original TNG people. Then you get back to this whole idea of new Trek and the people who watch the Berman era of Star Trek or the Roddenberry Kuhn era of Star Trek. There's lots of them that are not embracing it, but everybody loved Picard season 3. So the question is, and again, this is for another time, why? What did Terry Matalas do right that got everyone across the spectrum of Star Trek fans super excited about Picard season 3? And then most of them are not there for Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds has a core of great people, a core of fans, but lots of people. There are people who will never watch Strange New Worlds who loved Picard.
I
Why?
think a large part of the answer to that is simply it's going to be the most obvious question in the room. Terry was lucky in that he got these fantastic characters to come back, and he got a chance to write them. And because Terry is such a big fan, he wrote them the way that they should have been written. And I do think that the Strange New Worlds writers are a little bit. I haven't just really quick. I haven't been really pleased with the way that the show has been written so far. I have some issues, and I think that Terry wrote the crap out of season 3 of Picard in ways that other writers in other areas of Star Trek haven't been able to do as of yet. That's what I would say.
And on top of that, the production, just visually in Picard season 3, it feels like a logical extension of where we left off in Nemesis. Yes,
Right.
season 1 and 2 happened. You probably got to watch them to understand everything.
No, you don't.
But it really feels like the TNG DS9 Voyager universe so many years on. Because the respect for visual canon is just so undeniably blatant. It's like, even to the point where, like, here's the Bounty, here's the Defiant, here's the original design of a Constitution class. So in universe now, in New Trek for the first time, they're showing something besides the animation is done. Prodigy has done it, where they show like canonical things from the past.
Right.
But this is the first time we're truly seeing it consistently in live action.
Yes.
The issue
and
with
the other
Strange
thing
New
is,
Worlds is that it is a visual reboot, and in a
Right.
lot of other ways, it is a narrative reboot as well. They can feel they can explore things that maybe some fans will think are contradictory or something like that. But if you're having a show set right before TOS, I completely understand why the
good night,
bridge.
Joanne. Yeah.
I completely understand why the bridge can't look exactly like it did. However, you can make it pretty close. And what they do is they overproduce things.
Yes.
They just pour too much into it, and it looks like generic modern day sci-fi as opposed to specifically Star Trek. The Titan, when you're walking around the Titan and you're on the bridge and you see the Elcars and you see everything, you see the other ships in season 3, it all looks right, and it's not people being nitpicky and saying everything needs to look like it did in the past. It's just that you're showing the old like TNG bridge. Everything about it is accurate. They don't have stupid like hollow things popping up and people are like punching in the air, and the view screen doesn't have like all this busy work going on. It looks like, to the point where when they're in warp, it's the star effect, which I'm sure a lot of people are like, that's retro. We can never do that anymore. It's like, sure you can, because it makes fucking sense. If you're in a vessel moving at the speed of light, the stars at a distance would slowly be moving. in the original series, it was just the moving stars, and then they evolved it to streaking stars. And
I think you're onto something there, PJ. And I don't necessarily know if it's the TNG cast. I think the fact you had the entire TNG cast, what Jill was saying, because lots of people didn't like episode 1, and you had Patrick Stewart, you had Jerry Ryan, you had an episode with Jonathan Frakes and with Marina Sirtis, and still season 1 is lamented in a lot of ways. So I think the idea was they basically took everything you just said, PJ, not just the cast, but the writing, the production, not overproducing it, basically saying we're going to go from this point, Nemesis, Star Trek The Next Generation, we're going to go this way. We're not going to redesign. We're not going to rethink. We're not going to, redo, re-envision. We're going to take it forward. And everything else is re-envisioning. Discovery is re-envisioning. Strange New Worlds is re-envisioning. And people are not liking it to the degree that they like Picard season 3 anyway. So I think you're right about that.
And Discovery even got to a point where like, screw it, we're just going to jump ahead into the far future.
We're going to jump ahead into the future.
Right.
It's like, we can't deal with your complaints, people.
That's
that show you want, it's Strange New Worlds.
That's why.
See if that pisses you off. It's like, it's good. You know what? To be honest, Strange New Worlds is a nice show. It's an okay show. It's an okay. I will look forward to watching it. But I don't have the faith that I had before it started airing. Like, it started off well once they got with the Gorn stuff, and then the final episode. And there are good episodes in that first season for sure. And it looks good. It looks classic. It kind of has that classic kind of TOS feel to it.
Yeah, it does.
Updated. So if they can maintain that, I can get over. But there is a clear visual inconsistency among the different shows. They're not all perfectly connected in any kind of coherent way.
And again, this is another conversation of the day. But the idea of making the Gorn the way they are, giving Uhura a tragic backstory, having Kirk be, bringing even the idea of bringing Kirk on, right? The idea of changing Una around, Chapel. I mean, so, there's not, you can't draw lines backwards from TOS easily with the understanding that, yes, they've got updated. Yes, it's a new show. Yes, the effects have to be, the design has to be, all that stuff. But the lines back character-wise are getting muddled. And that, I think, is what is upsetting people the most.
They will explore more of Uhura's tragic backstory in season 2. I kind of got pissed off when they did it with the Rikers. Like, okay, we go to Nepenthe. Oh, the Rikers had a son that had a disease that only a positronic matrices could solve. Oh, the synth band. If the synth band didn't happen, he would have survived. I'm like, oh god, that seemed so forced. And like,
but they paid it off in season 3.
They totally paid off.
Yeah.
And hopefully with Uhura's backstory, something can come from that. It's like this trope of somebody has to have a traumatic incident in their life to be a fully formed character or something.
No, you don't.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of people who live pretty normal lives that can do extraordinary things in their jobs. But yeah. All right, guys. I want to thank you for being here. This has been a very, very great discussion, great chat. Thank you, Jill and Joanne, and I think PE was here at some point. Parenthesis.
Yeah, a bunch of folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, PJ, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate you hosting this space and putting on a great show. And great.
And it wouldn't be possible without you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone.
Until next time, folks.
Live long.